These people are the worst people alive. Let's go visit. The girls in these books might not have a friend in sight. Our main girlies never had a female friend in their lives. But the boys, they're going to have besties for life. Like, there's no male loneliness epidemic in a Sarah J. Maas novel. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Michelle. I hope you're doing well. We are recording at a different time of day, and so lighting is a little funky in here. Normally I don't record in the mornings, but it's the only time I had time today. I have like a very busy weekday life right now. It's a busy season for me, but like obviously needed to get this recap up for you people. I am so excited to jump into this one. It is really good. We're getting into like the heart of Court of Mist and Fury. We get to meet some like exciting characters in this section. We get to meet like Rhysand's inner court. And we also get Nesta again. We were in a Nesta drought last section, and we get to bring Nesta back this section, which is always good for me, because Nesta, as you know, is my girl. I hope this section isn't a million years long. So typically, when I do these videos, I make like a Google Drive document with my notes. I like do like outline style notes for each chapter. Normally, those notes are about 25 pages long, 45 pages long. So I'm a little worried that it's going to be really long. Essentially, I just like wanted to tell you all the things. I like don't want to leave anything out. It's all good stuff. I can't leave you hanging. That's kind of the deal with what is happening with this. So I hope it's not 1 million years long. But if it is, what am I to do? Quick recap to get us up to where we're at now. So Feyre, at the beginning of this book, was back in the Spring Court after all of her Under the Mountain adventures. She's Fae now. She's trying to get used to her new Fae body. She's deeply unwell. She's very, 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 very depressed. She's having these nightmares. She's throwing up all the time. And Tamlin is just like pretending nothing is wrong. Tamlin is like, actually, we're having like a great time. I think. I'm pretty sure this is going so well. And she's like, hey, I like would like to leave and maybe like go do a project, maybe like train. It does seem like I have magic powers now, so like maybe we should deal with those. And he's like, no, just like sit in the corner, have picnics, you can go on walks in the garden, you could paint a little, you just like are an inside girl doing inside crafts. And she's like, no thank you. On her wedding day, they get engaged. On her wedding day, Feyre's walking down the aisle when all of a sudden Rhysand appears, because Feyre's freaking out, to Rhysand's credit. She's freaking out. Rhysand appears and is like, I'm going to call in my bargain, because remember, ACOTAR, he had this bargain with her where 1 week a month she had to stay with him in the night court. Recall? And he's like, you have to come with me. And she's like, I'm in the middle of getting married, but also I didn't want to get married, but I'm also in the middle of getting married. And he takes her back to night court. She gets to night court and she's like, wait, it's actually so cutie here. This is actually the loveliest land ever. And it's honestly like getting a week-long monthly vacation, she finds. But she actually does that twice, because when she returns to the house after the second time, pretty quickly Tamlin like locks her in the house, like puts a force field around the house and is like, you can't leave. And she like freaks out, has this like magic panic attack in which she like covers herself in darkness and is like bursting with flame. And Rhysand's cousin and pal, comes and picks her up, takes her back to the night court. And that is where we will pick up now. Rhysand has like talked to her, and they're headed to Velaris, the city of starlight. Okay, so they walk in the door, and Feyre's like, this looks like it's in pretty good shape. I thought it was going to be destroyed. And she's like, it's actually looking really lovely. And Rhys is like, hello, this is my home, this is my house, this is where I live. And he explains that he actually has 2 houses in Velaris. Rhysand is a real estate mogul. He's got houses on houses on houses. Okay, he has 2 houses in Velaris. He has the townhouse, which is where they are currently, and he also has another one called the House of Wind, which we will visit later. I love the House of Wind. I will talk about the House of Wind when we get to it, but I love the House of Wind. It's probably my favorite location in the whole ACOTAR series. Anyway, they get to the house and he's like, it's my private residence. It's only really for me and my family, and it's like much smaller than the last book when she like came to visit. And there's only like 2 servants there, Nuala and Serdwin. I haven't said their names because I don't know how to pronounce them, so I've just avoided saying their names. But the Shadow Wraith girls that have been with Feyre since her time under the mountain are like the only servants there. Besides that, the house is completely empty. But that starts to make Feyre a little nervous, because that means there's like no buffer between her and Rhysand. And she's like, okay. And then she's like, okay, I know that the city will be in ruins outside. Like, from what she can see, things are looking okay. But like, she's like, I know, because Amarantha like destroyed all the cities in Prithian, that like this city will be in destruction. And like, I kind of need to prepare myself for like the disaster that I'll see outside of that window. But before she can kind of deal with that, she hears 2 men in the antechamber of this house. There's like a little like entryway antechamber. Rhysand is like trying to quickly explain the deal with the house while these boys are like chatting and bantering in the little entryway. And he's like, hey, just so you know, only me and Moore can directly winnow into the house. It's heavily warded. Only people that she wants or Rhys wants in the house will be able to come into the house. Like, she's safe, she's sound, she's cozy. Then she's like looking outside and she's like, that city looks very much intact. And he explains that the whole city is very well protected and hasn't been breached in over 5,000 years. Not even when Amarantha was ruling. And then Rhysand's like, hey, gonna give you a choice now. Those two boys might not be someone you want to meet right now. I know you're feeling a little sleepy after the escaping the spring court. If you want to just like head up, take a bath, take a nap, do whatever, that's totally fine. They are gonna come in right now. Rhys is like, they just keep banging on the door like children. And then a man who we will come to know is Cassian. You know we can hear you, prick. And Rhys is like, anyway, you can totally meet them now, or you can go take a nap and then change into like a city appropriate outfit and we'll take them out in the town. I'm going to give them a little lecture about how to talk to their High Lord because they're being rude right now. And then after you like rest, we can go out on the town. And Feyre comments about how much just like happier and lighter he like seems in this place. Like he doesn't seem to have like the weight of everything that was resting on him when they were in that other house in the night court. But Feyre is hit suddenly with the heaviness of everything that had happened that morning. Feyre just says to like Rhysand, just like, come and get me when they're gone. And Rhys looks a little sadder. He like can feel Feyre's heaviness and it weighs him down a little bit. And then there's a woman in the antechamber too. And she says, you Illyrians are worse than cats yowling to be let in at the back door. Really, Rhysand? You locked us out? And Feyre like heads upstairs. The shadow wraiths show her to a bedroom and like Rhys waits for her to get like fully upstairs before he opens the door. But she hears Rhys talking to the three of them, the women and the two men. And then Moore appears too. She hears Moore's voice and it's like very familial and very like jabby and chatty. And it's just like a very normal like family friend dynamic. And then Nuala explains that the people downstairs are Rhysand's inner circle, kind of like sort of explain what's happening. They brush Feyre's hair, tuck her into bed, and then Feyre's like, hey guys, wait a second, how is the city still here? She's like looked out her window and she can see like a beautiful winter garden and she can hear the sounds of like a thriving city out her window. And she's like, that doesn't really add up with what I know. And Sirwin, I like should look up how to say these names. Why didn't I look these up? The other one says the High Lord is very powerful and very devoted to its people. And Feyre's like, no. How did it survive? And the twins say it is not for us to tell. Rhys was like, didn't tell them to keep it a secret, but like it is very much like his story to tell. And they try to like shut the curtains, but Feyre's like, no thanks. I would actually like sun in here instead of darkness. She thinks to herself, I listened to the crackling fire, the chirp of the birds in the garden, potted evergreens, so different from the spring sweet melodies I was used to, that I might never hear again or be able to endure again. Maybe Amarantha had won after all. And some strange new part of me wondered if my never returning might be a fitting punishment for him, for what he had done to me. She's like really reeling with the after effects of what Tamlin has kind of like done to her. Feyre takes like a solid 4-hour nap. By the time she wakes up and is dressed, Rhys's guests are gone. And Feyre dresses for the winter weather with like a cutie little Katniss braid that goes like from one side of her head diagonal down the back. And this made me think, like, who do you think was the braiding sister? I feel like in any group of like girls, there's always like one girl that is like the braider girl who like can do the French braids. And I think it was probably Nesta. And I do think she probably pulled on their hair a lot. And then if they like whined about it, she like hit him with the brush. Not that hard, but just be like, stop whining. But I do feel like Nesta was the braider sister. Like it could have been Elaine. Elaine gives braider sister energy. I just don't think in any world it was Feyre. Like Feyre was not the girly braiding the other girly's hairs. I think it was either Nesta or Elaine. And I would like to know which sister was the braiding sister. Rhys takes Feyre out into the city and it's like cold, but it's like sunny. It's like a crisp winter day. Lovely. There's cobblestone streets and there's a ton of Fae walking around, both like high Fae and the lesser Fae. And none of them really even give like a second glance to Rhys. Like some of them smile at him and like wave, but like none of them are like flinching back in awe or like bowing or doing anything like kind of dramatic with his presence in the city. And there's a big river that runs through the center of the town and she can see kind of that runs to the sea on one side and then there's like a ring of mountains that like surrounds the city on the other side. So just like really tucked away. And then Rhysand points to the highest peak in the mountains and he is like, that's the House of Wind. That's my other residence. And she can see two winged creatures flying up there. I'm going to let you know something. I love the House of Wind so much. I already mentioned it, but like the House of Wind is my beloved, and I love the impossibility of it. Like the House of Wind does not make sense. We will get like a lot of specifics on House of Wind in Court of Silver Flames. This is not like spoilers unless you consider architectural detail spoilers. It has 10,000 stairs to get up there, and we learn in Silver Flame that those stairs are 1 foot high, and it's a spiral staircase. Okay, which means that the House of Wind is nearly 2 miles into the air. Literally 2 miles of a straight vertical climb. I'm sorry, you could not see 2 people flying at 2 miles. You couldn't see the windows. I feel like you probably could not see it because 1, they're not directly below House of Wind, so it's going to be like 2 miles and a little bit. And those aren't things you can see at a 2 mile distance. Again, I will certainly talk about it more as we spend more time with House of Wind, but it is my favorite location in all of ACOTAR. It is so delightful, so fun, and I love the impossibility of it. If you want to tell me all the reasons that it is possible and like this is what Sarah meant, okay, fine. But like, it is impossible. Let me tell you that it is impossible. With the dimensions that Sarah J. Maas has given us, it is not possible, and I love that it's not possible. I love that it doesn't quite make sense. That's magical to me. Anyway, Rhys is like, we're going to have dinner out there tonight. And Feyre's like, okay. Feyre can feel like the magic of the mountains, like they're alive. And then she's like, hey, Rhys, how did you save this city? And Rhys just says to her, luck. And Feyre's like, okay, well, it would have been nice if you could have shared some of that luck with some other places. It seems kind of mean that you saved one city out of a whole like continent. And Rhys is like, well, it was like easier to save because it's always been a secret place that no other courts know about, which is the only reason that it's been saved. And while I was writing this, I came up with a theory. I'm not a big theorizer, especially not in Throne of Glass. Throne of Glass, like, I don't have any theories. ACOTAR, I have some theories. And my new theory, I like to have my theories I like to just have no evidence. I'm here for a good time, not like a putting the puzzle pieces together time. Sometimes putting the puzzle pieces almost feels spoilery to me. Sometimes I'm like, ew, I think we did too much there. And my new theory that I invented while I was typing this was, what if every court has a secret city? Like every court has a Velaris that they just haven't told any other courts about, so none of the other courts know that they have a secret court. And you're like, well, Feyre was with Tamlin. Wouldn't Tamlin have told her? No. Tamlin didn't tell Feyre anything. There could 100% still be a secret city court in Sprint Court. I think it would be fun. I think it would be fun and cutie if they all thought they were like, we're the only ones with the secret court city. And they all actually have one. Wouldn't that be silly goofy? Probably not true, but I think it would be cheeky and fun. And Feyre's like, when Amarantha came, you didn't think to open this as a refuge to other people. And Rhys was like, we didn't have a lot of time. She didn't actually give us like warning. She wasn't like, hey guys, in a couple weeks, I am going to put you on lockdown. She just like kind of did it. And so I had to make some choices very, very quickly. Anyway, now is not the time for this conversation. Feyre's like, okay. And then Rhys takes her on a tour of Velaris. It is very cute and fun. There are like a lot of little shops and several town squares where people are gathered, and they explore for hours, and Feyre only winds up seeing about half of the city. They go to some markets and pick up some jewelry. People smile, and they like come and they like welcome him back to the city, and they're just like very friendly with Rhys. It is very like, they clearly know he's like the High Lord, and they like value his presence, but it's not like out of place. It doesn't feel like totally absurd. And then Rhys takes her to the artist quarter of the city and explains that there are like hundreds of galleries and art stores and like everything in between. And Feyre feels like really sad because none of that color, none of that art lives in her anymore. She hasn't been able to paint since she was under the mountain. Accessing that part of herself is just like too painful. So seeing all of this, seeing all this potential, seeing all that she could have access to makes her sad. And she says, I'm tired. And Rhys is like, okay, that's fine. We can come back another day. It's almost time for dinner anyway, so we should probably head back to the house. And Feyre gets like mad at the beauty of this place, at the beauty of Velaris. She is so upset that these people got to exist in like happiness and beauty while so many others were under the mountain. Like it feels so unfair, and she can like feel her magic bubbling under her skin as this like big rage kind of fills her. And Rhys can feel it too, and he's like, hey, calm down. Like, my people didn't choose this. Like, my people are blameless in all of this. Like, they were not the ones that were fueling Amarantha's rise to power. So, please don't explode them. And she, like, Feyre hears this, and immediately, like, her rage vanishes. She realizes that it's misplaced, and she's just like, I'm so tired. And Rhys takes her home. And he says to her, tomorrow night we'll go for a walk. Velaris is lovely in the day, but it was built to be viewed after dark. And then Rhys explains that his inner circle will be at dinner because he wants Feyre to meet them all before she decides to like officially work with them. Then he kind of like talks her through who she's going to meet. She's like, okay, so you've already met Mor, and then we also have Cassian, Azriel, and Amren. And so Amren is Rhys's second in command, and she is this creature we're told that is like not, she like looks like high fae. She exists in a high fae body, but she is like older than the written word. She's like super old, super ancient, super kind of scary. And then Mor is his third. And then we have Cassian and Azriel, and Cassian is his like general. He's like head of the military, and then Azriel is his spy master. But he's talking specifically about Amren first, and he talks about how like Amren loves treasure, but like she's kind of a scary lady. Feyre says to Rhys, so if we get into a brawl and I rip off her necklace, talking of Amren, she'll roast and eat me? He chuckled. No, Amren would do far worse things than that. The last time Amren and Mor got into it, they left my favorite mountain retreat in cinders. He lifted a brow. For what it's worth, I'm the most powerful High Lord in Prithian's history, and merely interrupting Amren is something I've done only once in the past century. I waited for the fear to hit, and waited for my body to shriek, to find a way to get out of the dinner, but nothing. Maybe it would be a mercy to be ended. A broad hand gripped my face, gently enough not to hurt, but hard enough to make me look at him. Don't you ever think that, Rhysand hissed, his eyes livid, not for one damned moment. That bond between us went taut. My lingering mental shields collapsed, and for a heartbeat, just as it had happened under the mountain, I flashed from my body to his, from my eyes to his own. I had not realized how I looked. My face was gaunt, my cheekbones sharp, my blue-gray eyes dull and smudged with purple beneath. The full lips, my father's mouth, were wan. Wayne? And my collarbones jutted above the thick wool of neckline of my sweater. I looked as if rage and grief and despair had eaten me alive, as if I was, again, starved, not for food, but for joy and life. In Throne of Glass, I love to call, like, every single literal scene my favorite scene in the entire book. That doesn't happen in Throne of Glass. I have one distinct favorite scene, and I will certainly tell you when we get to it, but I do have a lot of scenes that I think about often, and this is one of those moments, this moment in which Rhys, like, holds her face after she thinks, like, maybe it would be, like, a mercy to be, like, ended. And he holds her face and he's like, do not ever think about that. This moment, like, guts me, scoops on my guts. And I do think about it probably, like, once a month. There will be scenes we think about more. We've got weeklies and dailies coming up. But this one is a once a monther. Anyway, after this moment where, like, Feyre, like, slips past Rhys's shields, Rhys is feeling a little weird. Because, like, he's the most powerful High Lord in all of Prithian. Don't you ever forget. She just, like, slipped on past the shields. And Feyre's like, well, I also slipped into Lucian's mind. And Rhys is like, yeah, but I'm the most powerful High Lord in all of history. And Rhys is probably, well, the thing is, it's probably because, like, your magic knows my magic. Like, it comes from my magic. And so that means my shields probably got confused sometimes and let you through. I just, like, don't think that's what it is. I think it's because you like her bestie. I do think it's because you're in love with her. I do think it's because you're in love with her. I think that is really the cause here of your shields falling down. Anyway, Feyre's like, ew, take your magic back. I do not want it. And Rhys is like, that's not how it works. In order for me to get my magic, the, like, drop of magic back that you have, I'd have to kill you. But I need you to, like, really practice keeping those shields up, because now that you know about the secret of Velaris, if you ever were to leave, like, you're gonna have to keep that secret locked down. And he explains that his powers is called Damonti, which is just, like, the name. And it makes me think of Damon Salvatore from Vampire Diaries. Cut to, they go back to the house, they get ready for dinner, and we see Feyre arguing in the courtyard with Rhys, because Rhys explains that he needs to fly her up to House of Wind. Because there's either the 10,000 steps, or they fly in, and Rhys is like, I really don't want to take the stairs today. So I'm thinking we fly. Because no one can winnow into the House of Wind. It's, like, one of the protections on it. And Feyre's like, I'm wearing a cutie little gown. My hair is done super nice, and I don't want to mess it up. And Rhys is like, I will be so careful with you. I will make sure your hair doesn't get ruined. And Feyre is like, why can't we just meet with everyone here? At this townhouse, we're already here. They were here this morning, so obviously that would be fine. And Rhys is like, everyone is already up there. They're going to meet us up there. We don't have cell phones. I have to go get them anyway. Like, just come with me. We can have dinner up there. And also, this house is, and Rhys is like, also that house is, like, big enough where, like, I won't feel the need to, like, throw them off a balcony. Like, this house is a lot smaller. And the Feyre is like, you don't want me to burn this house down. You're worried that I'm going to explode and get magic on everyone. And he's like, well, maybe it could happen. And Feyre says, I'm not some broken doll. And Rhys says, I know you're not, but that doesn't mean I'll throw you to the wolves. If you meant what you said about wanting to work with me, to keep Hybern from these lands, to keep the wall intact, I want you to meet my friends first. Decide on your own if it's something you can handle. And I want this meeting to be on my terms, not whatever they decide to ambush this house again. You say the word and we come back here. No questions asked. If you don't want to work with them, that's fine. We'll find another way for you to be fulfilled. It's your choice, Feyre. Feyre's like, fine, just don't drop me. And Rhys would never drop her. Rhys scoops her up and they shoot into the sky. And Feyre is immediately like smitten with it. It is like so beautiful and like quiet and peaceful, and just like she can see the whole city of Velaris, and she just like is immediately like smitten with flying. And Rhysand tells her the story of like when he was a child, he used to sneak out of his bedroom window at night and just like go flying around Velaris. And sometimes if his mom caught him, she would like lecture him and then join him, and she would fly around with him too. And Feyre's like, oh my gosh, she sounds so lovely. And Rhys just goes, she was. They land on a balcony at House of Wind, and Rhys can tell that she's like really thinking hard about something. And he is like, okay, I'm going to share something from my thoughts first, and then it'll be your turn. We'll take turns sharing thoughts. And Rhys says, I am thinking that I spent 50 years locked up under the mountain, and that sometimes I let myself dream of this place, but I never expected to see it again. I am thinking that I wish I had been the one who slaughtered her. I'm thinking that if war comes, it might be a long while yet before I get to have another night like this. And Feyre, after some convincing, shares her thoughts too. She says to Rhys, I'm thinking that I must have been a fool in love to allow myself to be shown so little of the Spring Court. I'm thinking there's a great deal of that territory I was never allowed to see or hear about, and maybe I would have lived in ignorance forever, like some pet. I'm thinking, the words became choked. I shook my head as if I could clear the remaining ones away, but still I spoke them. I'm thinking that I was a lonely, hopeless person, and I might have fallen in love with the first thing that showed me a hint of kindness and safety. And I'm thinking that maybe he knew that. Maybe not actively, but maybe he wanted to be that person for someone. And maybe that worked for who I was before. Maybe it doesn't work for what I am now. There. The words, hateful and selfish and ungrateful for all Tamlin had done, the thought of his name clanged through me. Only yesterday afternoon I had been there. No, I wouldn't think about it. Not yet. And then Rhys's conversation with Feyre is cut short because Cassian and Azriel are cheesing from the doorway. They're cheesing in the door because they're just watching Rhys flirt with a girlie. Feyre is kind of nervous as these big guys approach her. They both have like full wings, like similar to Rhys's wings, but they can't magic theirs away. Cassian says, come on, Feyre, we don't bite unless you ask us to. And Rhys is like, last I heard, Cassian, no one has ever taken you up on that offer. And then Rhys introduces her to both Cassian and Azriel. Azriel, again, is the spy master. Cassian is the general of Rhys's armies, and Feyre asks if they're brothers, and Cassian says they're brothers in the sense that all bastards are brothers of a sort. So they're not like biologically related, but they like grew up together. Cassian asks Feyre, like one of the first questions he asks her is about how she killed the worm, and it becomes very clear very quickly that he wasn't under the mountain. And Rhys is like very warily like looking on as Cassian jokes with Feyre, and then Mor arrives, and Feyre is like surrounded by all of these new people, and Cassian and Mor love to bicker. It is like their favorite thing. It is like a fun sort of like jabbing, but it's like pretty constant when Cassian and Mor are together. The conversation itself is like not important, the contents of this conversation, it's just like important, this like teasing energy that is happening between them. Mor pulls Feyre aside and to like let the boys do all the boy stuff that they're gonna do, and is like, I want to chat with you before Amren gets here, and once she shows up, she's gonna dominate all your attention. But before they can actually talk, Amren does show up, and immediately Feyre is like, oh my gosh, she's terrifying. She's teeny tiny, but she is scary. Amren sits down at the table and like pours herself a glass of wine, and her and like Rhys chat, and Feyre notices she's wearing the jewelry that Rhys and Feyre had picked out from the market earlier that day, and Rhys is like, oh my gosh, that jewelry really suits you. And Amren is like, everything I wear suits me. And then Amren turns to Feyre next, and she says to Feyre, now there are two of us. And she explains that she and Feyre are the same, that their bodies are high fae, but like they aren't really their bodies, that they are created, not born high fae. And Amren's like, actually, there's three of us now that I think of it. And Rhys says there's like a third woman named Miriam. And Rhys says last he heard, Miriam and Draken are doing well. Okay. Hold that in your brain for 20 years from now. We'll need that information eventually. Amren notes that it's interesting that another creature like them has been made right now before something is major is supposed to happen. It seems like very like prophetical almost. She points out that Feyre is different from Miriam because Miriam was just gifted immortality. She was a human that was gifted immortality, where Feyre has been put in a high fae body. Like she is like everything from her bones to her blood is like new and made. She's a mortal soul in an immortal body. Which, that sounds kind of ominous. I'm sorry, like, if your soul is mortal, but your body is immortal, I just feel like seems like it's not going to bode well. I know that's like how Feyre is always described, and I don't think it's supposed to imply that like her soul's gonna die, but like it's kind of given your soul's gonna die. They start dinner. There's like a lot more bantering. Moore is like, I wanted to take you to dinner, just the two of us, but Rhysand said you wouldn't agree to it. And then Cassian is stealing Amren's dinner, and Amren's like, that's so rude. Amren doesn't eat people food, but like still kind of rude. And Feyre is struck by like how casual the group is and how odd that feels in comparison to Tamlin. Whenever they ate with like Tamlin's friends, even with like Lucien, there was like a formality to their meals together, and this is just like very casual. They call it family dinner, and it like very much feels that way. She realizes that like she could have showed up in her pajamas and like no one would have thought twice about it. They aren't trying to impress her. They're just really interested in like hanging out with each other. Azriel hasn't said much, but Feyre is staring at him and like the blue jewels in his gauntlet, and he explains what they are. He says that the blue jewels, he has blue ones, Cassian has red ones, are called siphons, and they help him channel his magic. Rhys then explains that like Illyrian magic, which are the winged males, so Rhys is half Illyrian, and then Cassian and Azriel are Illyrian. They have kind of this just like killing magic that is pretty strong, but it's not very precise. He explains it as like throwing a bucket of paint at a wall, and the siphons allow them to channel it a little bit more specifically. So it's like allowing them to use that paint with a brush instead. And then Feyre is talking to Cassian, and she calls him Lord Cassian, and Cassian starts to literally crack up and bumps into Moore, and Moore spills her wine. Everyone is like really taken aback by this because it is so silly goofy, because Cassian is not a lord. And Rhys explains that like actually none of them are true lords. Like Moore is the only one with any like noble blood. Cassian and Azriel are Illyrian, and he is half Illyrian. They're just like randos, not lords. And then Cassian explains that like the Illyrians aren't technically high fae, that pretty much like any discrepancy between like a high fae and anyone else makes them like lesser fae. Like it really is kind of a tool that is used by the like high fae and the nobility to create like a class distinction. And so Illyrians aren't high fae at all. But they work like very closely with the Night Court. They are like the aerial legion of the military for the Night Court. So the Illyrians are an important part of the Night Court ecosystem. And then Feyre like blatantly comes out and asks if any of them were under the mountain. And Moore explains that none of them were. And Rhys clarifies that no one mentioned them and no one knew that they existed. And if anyone did try to tell Amarantha about his inner circle, he made sure their minds were no longer there. And Feyre is like just kind of like still trying to grapple with this. The fact that he like kept this city and all these people hidden from Amarantha for 50 years while being like in bed with her every night. And Amren says in reply to like Feyre's question, we will keep this city safe from far worse enemies. Like we have kept it safe before, and we will keep it safe again. Feyre can tell that this is something that everyone at the table has like really struggled with. The fact that Rhys has spent 50 years under the mountain with Amarantha and like willingly did so that they could continue to live here in the city in freedom. And it's clear that Rhys like never expected to come home. Like he truly expected to die under the mountain, and he still willingly sacrifice that to keep them all safe. Like that was the most important thing to him. And the people at the table know about this incredible sacrifice that he made. Like none of them take it for granted, and there is a sense of like incredible like discomfort and heaviness with this and how much Rhys has done for them. And Moore says to Feyre, there's not one person in the city who is unaware of the cost of what went on outside the borders and what it took to keep them safe. Feyre then is like ready to switch to a lighter topic, so she asks about how they all met. And the boys have an eyeball conversation. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The boys have an eyeball conversation. They are close enough to have eyeball conversations. The girls in these books might not have a friend in sight. Our main girlies never had a female friend in their lives in a Sarah J. Maas book, but the boys, they're gonna have besties for life. They are gonna have true best friends. They're gonna have blood brothers in their hearts. Okay? And the boys can have eyeball combos. They can have true eyeball combos because they're that close. You can't have eyeball combos with people you're not close to. Number 1 rule of Sarah J. Maas books. But the boys, they can have eyeball combos. Cassian starts to tell the story, talking about how much they hated each other when they first met. And Feyre looks over at Rhys and sees that he looks devastated, that the conversation they were just having about Amarantha and their time under the mountain has just really brought him back to that place, and that he is still struggling with it in a similar way that Feyre is. Anyway, back to Cassian. He explains that they met at an Illyrian war camp. And then we learn a little bit more about Azriel. We learn that Azriel is a bastard son of an Illyrian lord and was pretty hated. We will continue to learn more about Azriel's story. It's pretty upsetting. Essentially, when he was a child, because he was this bastard son, he was essentially kept in a closet. He was kept in the dark. He was only allowed out for 1 hour a day, and then until he was 11 or 12, when he was dropped off at this Illyrian war camp. But we also learned that he's a shadow singer, which is this particular talent. It's kind of in a similar vein as the Damati, except he doesn't have control over minds. He's control over shadows, and he can talk to shadows and stuff. It's why he makes such a good spy master. They're super, super rare and highly coveted by courts, because what a great tool to have in your arsenal. And they're really valued because of their stealth. He can also hide in the shadows, and their ability to hear things in rooms that they are not in. We also learn that Cassian is an orphan. His mother was worked to death, and Illyrians are known for being really great at war, but they are quite a brutal people, and they're brutally cruel to their women. And we learn that there's this practice in the Illyrian world where they will cut the wings of Illyrian women, not fully, but just enough so they can't fly, that once they have their first period, their wings get cut. And essentially the women in Illyrian society are treated as breeding stock for future warriors. Cool. I'm so glad that these are an important part of our military. Then we get the story of what happened with Rhys's mother. So we start there. We learn that when an Illyrian woman gets her first period, she's taken to a war camp and has her wings clipped so she can't fly. And Rhys's mother loved flying so much and was just terrified of having this happen to her that she starved herself to avoid going into puberty, which is just truly horrifying. But eventually she does, and she's immediately scented and picked up and taken to one of these war camps. But just as she arrives and is being dragged to the center of camp, Rhys's father arrives, and the moment he sees Rhys's mother, the mating bond snaps into place, and he sees all these men surrounding his mate, and he mists them all. And we learn that misting is where you just you think a thought and you poof into mist, Rhys also has this power of misting. It's very Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They immediately get married. Rhys's mother really did love Rhys's father, but she never forget where she came from. And she spent years trying to get Rhys's father to crack down on the Illyrians in this practice of clipping women's wings, but he refused because the Illyrians are such an important part of their military, and he knew war was coming and he didn't want to alienate them. Boo! Does Rhys do a better job? I mean, slightly. We'll talk about Rhys's ruling prowess at some point, I'm sure. It leaves stuff to be desired. That's all I'm saying. I'm just saying there might be a blonde woman who could do a better job. Rhys kind of goes on to explain that over the years, although his parents were mates, they were really weren't a good fit for each other. His father was brutal and fierce, and his mother was what he called soft fire. And eventually his mother grew to hate Rhys's father because they just weren't a good fit, even though she was grateful that he saved her. And she got to keep her wings. She could fly wherever she wanted, whenever she wanted. Still cared about her Illyrian heritage, because when her own son is 8 years old, she says, "We got to take you to war camp. I know I hate these people. They tried to clip my wings. They're actually the worst people on the planet of Earth. But it's still our culture. Girlie, you didn't have to go back. You could have just said, no thanks. My boy won't be going there." I don't know why you were these people are the worst people alive. Let's go visit. It might be a good time to go no contact with that people. Anyway, when Rhys is 8, he's sent to a war camp to be trained like all other Illyrian males. And it also kind of served a secondary purpose of getting Rhys out of his father's way. Rhys's mother also stayed near the war camp, but didn't step in because it is really looked down upon in Illyrian society to be coddled. And so Rhys would go home to his mom's house at night, but during the day he was kind of on his own. And she shoves him into the sparring ring on day 1. He's 8. He's 8 years old. 8. That's just a little nugget. That's a second or third grader. Again, every book, I'm we need to really have some conversations around the level of responsibility we're placing upon 8-year-olds. 8-year-olds be dumb. 8-year-olds should be chilling, not being forced to go to war camps. Radical point of view. Anyway, he's at this war camp, and Rhys talks about how he like tried to use siphons when he was at this war camp, but he was just too powerful and he kept shattering them. Rhysand, in this book in general, love to bring up the fact that he is the most powerful High Lord in Prithian's history. Okay, I get it. And you know what? You could have said it once, and I would have gotten it. And this actually seems like an appropriate time to tell you guys something, as I bully Rhys. I love Rhysand with my entire heart. Like, I do. I know I'm bullying him, and I will continue to bully him, because he deserves to be bullied a little bit. But, like, when I think about all-time favorite book boys, he is in my top 5. And, like, I have read a lot of books in my life. He's, like, easily in my top 5. And, like, once you're in my top 5, you don't leave. So this is not a category that is, like, constantly evolving. Like, he is up there with Edward Cullen, who got promoted to top book boy status when I was, like, 14 or 15. So, please know I love Rhys. He's my favorite Sarah J. Maas man by, like, a mile. By a mile. But sometimes I'm like, don't tell me about how he's the most powerful High Lord. I don't care. If he was a girly, I would care. But anyway, I want you to know when I'm teasing him, when I'm bullying him a little bit, no, it's with every single drop of love in my heart, because I do love him and I adore him. And he's my favorite. Okay. I thought we should get that off my chest. Okay. Rhys gets banned from using his magic at the war camp because Illyrians don't have the same level of power, and it's just not fair. Cassian spots him. First day at war camp, Cassian spots him. Cassian's been at this war camp for a little bit before Rhys arrives. He spots him and he says, I want that boy's outfit. I want his clothes, because Rhys comes in wearing a cutie little High Lord son outfit. Like, he's wearing fancy clothes. He's in designer. He strolls in. Cassian says, I'm going to beat that boy up and steal his clothes. Okay. Cassian is poor, and so, like, he used to win all of his gear by fighting. Because remember, he's like an orphan. He's a bastard and his mom's dead. Like, he doesn't have anyone to look out for him. And, at this, like, Feyre and Cassian kind of, like, exchange a look. There's this understanding between them. Like, they both know what it is to go hungry, to be without. Anyway, so Cassian sees Rhys's little fancy High Lord outfit, and he's like, I'm gonna beat that kid up. And at the time, Cassian is, like, the reigning champion of fights at Illyrian war camp. Like, he's already beaten up everyone else at war camp twice. So he sees Rhys, and he's like, fresh target, a new outfit to steal. They have a fight, and they both get 3 lashings for this, like, unsanctioned fight. Because even at Illyrian war camp, you can't just fight people randomly. This isn't the 4th wing. Okay, we have rules in this village. Feyre, like, flinches at that because they're, again, 8 years old. She says, maybe we shouldn't be whipping 8-year-olds. Again, radical thought. But you know, Illyrians are kind of the worst. And Feyre's like, why did your mom willingly send you there? Little judgmental, which, like, I understand. I'm a little judgmental about this too. And Rhys is like, well, she didn't want me to rely too much on magic. She wanted me to, like, be, like, fully educated. Like, she wanted me to be educated in, like, fighting. And also at night, she would, like, teach him how to, like, read and, like, think. Like, she wanted him to be a well-rounded boy. It was the OG Rhys school. The homeschooling model was Rhys's mother. Rhys is like, it taught me to be powerful in all the ways, not just, like, with my magic. And we learned that after the fight and the lashings, Rhys is back at home. His mom has, like, tended to all of his wounds, and he's, like, looking out the front window, and he sees Cassian trudging through the woods. And he's like, Mom, do you know where Cassian's going? Where's that kid going? And his mom explains that because Cassian is a bastard, he doesn't get any shelter. You don't have a dad? Okay, you don't get a house. They are forced to, like, make their own way in these, like, brutal mountain conditions. They're, like, up in the mountains. And for the first time, Rhys is like, it seems like I do have it pretty good. He's, like, recognized his own privilege for the first time. Fun. What a treat. In the middle of the night, Rhys goes and finds Cassian and brings him back to his house. And Cassian is like, what the hecky? But he's glad to have a house. And they arrive back to the house, and at first, Rhys's mom isn't thrilled about it, but pretty quickly she runs a bath for Cassian and gives him a bed. And Cassian is totally thrown because he's, like, never really slept in a bed before. And the luxury of just, like, having a mattress feels so unfamiliar. And Rhys's mom is like, I know what that feels like, but, like, trust me, buds are so cool. You're gonna love them. You'll get used to them, and you'll be a big fan. They're tight. Even in the, like, the days and weeks after Rhys's mom takes Cassian under her wing, Rhys and Cassian are not friends. Just because Cassian is now staying with Rhys, they're not pals until Azriel arrives. It's at that point that they become friends, and they, like, At that point, they had kind of stopped fighting. They like didn't fight between each other a lot just because they mostly didn't want to get in trouble. But now Azriel's here, and it was like a big deal to have him because it meant Cassian had like another person who was like a bastard with him, and he wasn't alone anymore. And he's a shadow singer, which was like this huge deal. And Cassian's like, but it was super weird. He couldn't fly when he first came. But Mor like cuts him off. And it's like very clear that Mor is a little bit protective of Azriel, particularly this part of Azriel, and wants it to be like Azriel who tells this like aspect of his story. Anyway, Rhys's mother back in the day knew Azriel's mother, and so she was happy to take Az in. And then the three of them, Rhys, Cassian, and Azriel, realized that they were the odd ones out at camp, and so they decided like they would have better chances of surviving if they stuck together. And Feyre's like, does Azriel have any, or does Cassian have any special gifts like shadow singer, mind reader? What about you, Cassian? And Mor cuts in with, no, not unless you count as temper. And Cassian explains that no, he doesn't have any magical gifts, just like the typical Illyrian killing power, but he is really good at fighting people. After about 20 years of Illyrian war camp, Rhys's father shows up to like check on things, see how Rhys's training is progressing. By this point, Rhys, Azriel, and Cassian have like teamed up, and they are super powerful. They are the most powerful people at the camp. And Rhys is, again, the most powerful High Lord and has like intense like mind powers and magic. And Azriel and Cassian, although they are just Illyrian, are also extraordinarily strong. They've each been given like siphons, and like a couple of them, which are typically reserved for like pure-blooded Illyrian nobility, but because of their strength, they like have to have access to them. And Rhys's father starts to worry that they might try to usurp him after the war, and so when they go to fight in the war, he splits them up. He sends Cassian to just be like a ground soldier in a military force. He gives Rhysand a force, and then he takes Azriel to be his spy master. And for the next 7 years, they're split up. And Cassian says that every time he checked the death rolls, every time death rolls came in, he would like carefully check them for his brother's names, like with so much anxiety over like losing one of them, to have this like separation. And Rhys says, so then once I was appointed High Lord, I immediately made them part of my court. People who had a problem with my friends could leave. And Rhys is like, and they did. People did have a problem with it, and people did leave. They was like, okay, well then what? And we like the next part of their story that we're told is when Amarantha came into the picture, and we learned that the nobility of the Night Court kind of fell into 3 categories when Amarantha came into the picture. I'm going to read you a quote. Those who hated me enough that when Amarantha took over, they joined her court and later found themselves dead. Those who hated me enough to try to overthrow me and face the consequences. And those who hated me but not enough to be stupid and have since tolerated a half-breed's rule, especially when it so rarely interferes with their miserable lives. And he explains that like those people who like tolerate him but aren't like cool enough to come to Velaris live in the hewn city and exist in something called like the Court of Nightmares, which exists in that under the mountain, not under the mountain, the place, but under a mountain, where kind of located underneath where they're like the house that she was staying in when she was on Night Court vacations post-wedding. And then, so there's the Hewn City and the Court of Nightmares, and then they exist as like the Court of Dreams. I'm going to talk about this later, but I do think this is an unethical way to govern. I don't think it's cool to just have like one nice city and then everyone else is evil. We'll talk about it more later. Feyre then asked about Amren and Mor and like how they came to be a part of this. And Amren says Rhys asked her to be his second. She'd never done it before. So she decided it sounded interesting. So she said yes. And Mor just says she was a dreamer born into the Court of Nightmares. And you know what? I bet there are a lot of people that are dreamers born into the Court of Nightmares will learn that, again, the Court of Nightmares also doesn't treat their women very well. Also, their women are treated incredibly poorly. Do we do anything about that? No. We'll talk about it. And then Cassian asks Feyre for her story, and Feyre kind of like tells the whole story of like how her mother died when she was fairly young, and then she grew up with her sisters and her father and then she kind of gets the part of the story about where everything with the Fae began. And Cassian's like, wow, I'm like so impressed that you taught yourself how to hunt. That like is very cool. And he's like, did you also learn how to fight? And Feyre's like, no. And Cassian's like, oh my gosh, well, I have such great news for you. I'm actually such a great fighting teacher. I'm the best teacher. I'm actually the gym teacher here at Rhys School. Let me know when you want to learn how to start fighting, and we can do that. And Feyre starts thinking through everything Tamlin told her about like training and everything. And she says to Cassian, don't you think it sends a bad message if people see me learning how to fight and to use weapons? But as soon as she says it out loud, she realizes how stupid that sounds. She was like, that man brainwashed me. That's stupid. People are not going to be like, she's learning how to fight. We should be scared. Also, we just don't have to tell them if it's really going to be that scary. Moore chimes in and says, as someone who's been in a similar situation, she has 2 things to say. She says, 1, Feyre has already sent a message to her people by leaving the Spring Court. Like, that sends them a pretty powerful message in itself. And 2, I once lived in a place where the opinions of others mattered. It suffocated me, nearly broke me. So you'll understand me, Feyre, when I say that I know what you feel, and I know what they tried to do to you, and that with enough courage, you can say to hell with a reputation. Her voice gentled, and the tension between them all faded with it. You do what you love, what you need. And Feyre's like, oh my gosh, I think I have a friend. Hey everyone, I think I made a friend, and she's a girl. Not to brag, but I think I have my first friend. Book 2 of the series, finally got a friend. So scary. If Sarah J. Maas books are a warning against anything, it's that you really should have some friends. You really need you need a friend. You need a friend. You need a friend more than you need a boy. Anyway, Feyre tells Cassian she'll think about training with him. And she can feel Rhys's delight to the bond. He's like so excited that she's like gonna train and do more things. He's so excited. Even though he has his shields up, like the little joy still trickles through. And then she tells Rhys she wants to work with him to earn her keep and to do whatever she can to defeat Hybern. She's like agreeing to his offer finally. And Rhys is like, that is so perfect. That is so awesome because we're actually gonna start tomorrow. And Feyre's like, okay, that's really speedy, but okay. And Rhys is like, the king of Hybern definitely wants to start a war, and I think his plan is to resurrect Jurian. Do you remember Jurian? We talked about him briefly in the last book. It was the guy that Amarantha kept in her little ring. She had an eyeball ring, and Jurian was in there. And the eyeball ring and Jurian's finger bone went missing. And now it seems like the king of Hybern wants to bring him back. And Feyre's like, why? And Moore is like, why would the king of Hybern want Jurian? It doesn't totally make sense, because I believe Jurian was on the side of the human people. Jurian also murdered Amarantha's sister, which was rude, and the whole reason that Amarantha was like fighting everyone. Amren mentions that the king of Hybern would have heard about Feyre's resurrection and probably brought up some ideas, and so now he knows it's possible. Moore points out that in order to like resurrect someone like they did Feyre, they would need all 7 High Lords, and no one's going to agree to that. There's no way you're going to get all 7 of them to be on board with that. And Rhys is like, there's probably like a loophole somehow. And it's like probably connected to all of these like massacres and like lootings that are happening at all of these nearby temples. And it definitely has to do with that grave robbing that happened at Sangrava 3 days ago. And Feyre realizes that it's probably also why that finger bone vanished when Amarantha was killed. Feyre's like, who would do this? And then she's like, the Attor. He was never caught and killed from Amarantha's court. And then Rhys is like, hey, does anyone know how you might take a finger bone and turn it into a person again? That's what we need to like figure out and how to stop it. And then he directs the question to Amren. He's like, hey, do you know? And Amren is like, yeah. You already know the answer. I don't know the answer, but you know where you need to go to the answer. And they have to go to the prison and speak to the Bone Carver. Boney! I love Bone Carver. I know people are big fans of the cereal. I'm a big fan of the Bone Carver. Moore and Cassian are both like, oh shit. And Rhys suggests that Amren might be more effective to like go talk to him. He's like, why don't you go talk to him? And Amren says, I will not set foot in that prison again. You know it. Azriel volunteers. He's like, the prison sentries know me. I can just head on down there. And Rhys is like, don't be silly. Feyre and I will go. And Feyre's like, excuse me, I like agreed to go to no prison. And Amren explains, like, well, it's going to have to be Feyre to go because Bone Carver will be interested in talking to Feyre because she has, like, a very novel experience. And he'll be interested to hear more about it because she's, again, an immortal soul with a mortal body. No, she's a mortal soul with an immortal body. And the group kind of waits for Feyre to cower or panic. But Feyre's like, actually, now that I think about it, this is, like, right up my alley. I think this will be so fun. She thinks to herself, but the Bone Carver, the Naga, the Attor, the Suriel, the Bogey, the Middengarn worm, maybe they'd broken whatever part of me truly feared. Or maybe fear was only something that I now felt in my dreams. Your choice, Feyre, Rhys said casually. To shirk and mourn or face some unknown horror. The choice is easy. How bad can it be? Was my response. Bad, Cassian said. None of them bothered to contradict him. Feyre, on her way home, is still thinking about Jurian and everything that kind of has unfolded with him. And she likes flying downhill back down to the house a lot less than flying up. It is like a lot less peaceful and a lot more like you're flying and it's scary. And Rhys is like, hey, Feyre asked Rhys if she got past his shield tonight. And Rhys is like, the bond is a living thing. It's an open channel between us, shaped by what we both needed when we took that bargain. So, like, maybe this is just, like, the point of the bond. Okay, sure, Jan. Sure, Jan. You didn't slip past it. You just, like, it's just like a thing when And Feyre was like, okay, well, all I needed was, like, to not be dead when I took that bargain. So Rhys is like, yeah, you also needed to not be alone. And Rhys is, like, still trying to kind of figure out how the bond between them works, because he's not sharing all the details of it. And then Feyre asks him, like, kind of about how he portrays himself to the world. She says, you let Amarantha and the entire world think you rule and delight in a court of nightmares. It's all a front to keep what matters most safe. And Rhys says, I love my people and my family. Do not think I would not become a monster to keep them protected. And Feyre says, you already did that under the mountain. The words were out before I could stop them. The wind rustled his hair. And I suspect I'll have to do it again soon. What was the cost, I dared ask, of keeping this place secret and free? He shot straight down, wings beating to keep us smooth as we landed on the roof of the townhouse. I made to step away, but he gripped my chin. You already know the cost. It was becoming Amarantha's whore. And Rhys explains that he spent all of his energy, almost all the magic he had left, actively controlling people to forget about Velaris and his people and to shield his city so no one could stumble across it or find it. He had little power left to keep her from answering, to keep Amarantha from asking him questions. So instead, he distracted her. He became her whore. And then Rhys was like, bye, I actually have to go burn off some energy. This was kind of a lot. He drops her off at the house and he goes to leave. And then Feyre says to him, it's a shame that the others in Prythian don't know. A shame that you let them think the worst. He took a step back, his wings beating in the air like mighty drums. As long as the people who matter most know the truth, I don't care about the rest. Go get some sleep. That night, Feyre has nightmares about Amarantha again, about lying naked as Amarantha carves out her heart and tells her, you are just as much a monster as me. And then a voice is, like, shaking her awake and calling her name. This is how she describes the voice. The voice was at once the night and the dawn, the stars and the earth, and every inch of my body calmed at the primal dominance in it. And Rhys tells her to, like, open her eyes, and she does, and her mouth is full of ash, and her face is, like, sticky and wet, and Rhys is, like, hovering above her. Is he flying? I think that's the implication. He's, like, flying above her in bed. I'm sorry, that's kind of a weird vibe. She has lit herself on fire and completely shredded the sheets with her claws. And then she goes and pukes in the toilet and her fingers are still on fire. Rhys is trying to, like, talk her through, slowly blowing them out each one by one. He's actually giving, like, helpful instructions, a first over in Reschool. And the Feyre does not have time for it. She's, like, busy throwing up in the toilet and she just takes her fingers and dunks them in the toilet. I don't know what the plumbing situation is here, but is the throw up gone? That's really gross. That actually made me nauseous. I'm sorry I put that idea in your head. I'm sure she flushed the toilet first. I'm sure it is a clean, spotless toilet that she just dipped her hands in. Ew. Rhys is, like, holding her hair, and he is talking to her about his nightmares. And he says, I have nightmares too about Under the Mountain. I have dreams that it's Az or Cassian that she somehow caught and has their wings pinned to the wall, and that he's forced to watch and, like, reckon with the fact that he's failed them. And Feyre is like, you didn't fail them, though. And Rhys is like, yeah, I did horrible things to ensure that. And Feyre's like, so did I. And then Rhys is like, those flames are from Autumn Court, by the way. Those where those cutie frames are from. She falls asleep, like, in the bathroom, but when she wakes up, she's back in bed with fresh sheets. They're headed to the prison. They're standing on a grassy slope. Rhysand has, like, winnowed them to as close as they can without the prison, but they're gonna have to walk the rest of the way. Rhys is, like, dressed for a fight. He's, like, in leathers. And, we learn also that Rhys earlier this morning sent a letter to the Summer Court with a request to visit for diplomatic reasons. And we are walking to Prison Island. The prison is inside of this rock. It is giving Alcatraz. It's an island off the coast of Prythian, and there's this big rock, and the prisoners are housed within, and it houses the most dangerous creatures and criminals you can imagine. Rhys says, this place was made before High Lords existed, before Prythian was Prythian. Some of the inmates remember those days. Remember a time when it was Moor's family, not mine, that ruled the north. And Feyre's like, why won't Amren go in the prison? And Rhys is like, oh, because she was a prisoner here, so she doesn't like going back and visiting. Weird. She doesn't have any prison friends? Any prison pals? She doesn't. Feyre starts freaking out because she realizes that she's going to have to go underground. Like, no one told her the prison was underground, and that gives her some, like, PTSD trauma. And she starts panicking, and she's trying to, like, be like, I have to do this to keep my sisters safe, to keep the people of the human realm safe to keep Hybern at bay. Like, I have to do this. But she's, like, panicking. And Rhys is, like, trying to talk her through it. He's like, when I'm panicking, it really helps me to remember that, like, I got out. We all got out. And Feyre's like, we barely got out. Okay? So let's not put too much stock in that. And Rhys is like, it doesn't matter. We got out. It might happen again if we don't go inside. And Feyre's like, for sure. And she's, like, trying to force herself to walk forward. But she, like, can't move. And she just turns to Rhys and she says, please. And Rhys immediately takes her home. Not a second question. Immediately goes home. And Feyre just goes up to bed and she, like, stays in bed for the rest of the day. When Feyre wakes up the next morning, Amren is standing at the foot of her bed, which is, like, a scary thing to wake up for. A scary thing to wake up to. And Amren is like, no wonder you are so thin if you vomit your guts out every single night. You smell... Okay, rude. Feyre's like, what the heck? Rhys said no one could get in here without my permission. Amren's like, okay. And she takes this amulet that is, like, made out of pearl and blue stone, and she throws it on Feyre's bed, and she says, this got me out of the prison. Wear it, and they can never keep you. You can borrow it when you go down to the prison, and then you give it back. If you keep it, the results won't be pleasant. And then Amren just, like, leaves before Feyre can react. Can you imagine waking up to that? She's, like, still, like, groggy, and Amren's, like, throwing jewelry at her. I mean, like, make sure to return this. And Feyre's like, what? Anyway, they head up to the prison again today, and the whole time Rhys keeps looking at the amulet and being like, he doesn't say anything, but, like, he's clearly looking at it. I guess he does say something. I lied to you. I looked at the next line. He does say something. Okay? He says, she gave that to you? And Feyre says, it must be serious then. And Rhys says, don't say anything you don't want overheard. The inmates listen for gossip through the rocks, which, like, obviously I would too if I was a prisoner. Oh my gosh, someone's coming and they're talking, they have tea? I want to know it. It's probably why I like the Bone Carver. Bone Carver is really here just for the gossip. Just for the gossip. All the monsters in this book are here for gossip. Not all of them. We're going to meet another monster that is not here for the gossip. She's here for the shiny things, but we'll get to it in a minute. Feyre's like, I'm sorry about yesterday. As she's hiking, she's, like, kind of having a hard time hiking. She has, like, not really had any, like, physical fitness, any physical exertion, because Tamlin wouldn't let her out of the house. And so she just, like, got to walk around flat garden paths, like, slowly. And so, like, hiking at a, like, brisk pace is kind of making her a little out of breath. But Rhys is like, you've got nothing to be sorry for. You're here now. I won't dock your pay. My note here, because I just feel like you should know this. The first time I read this entire book, until, like, the end, I'll tell you when, and it's later than it should have been. It's much later than it should have been. I was worried about Tamlin. I didn't even like him that much. I didn't even like the blondie that much. But I was like, it seems like Tamlin's probably having a hard time back at Spring Court. Has anyone thought about him? Has anyone gone to check on Tamlin? How's Tamlin doing? Tamlin locked her in a house. She couldn't even exercise because all she could do was, like, walk around the yard. It was like she was in prison. And I was like, I hope Tamlin's okay. I couldn't enjoy this. I couldn't enjoy this banter because I was worried about the blonde man. Sometimes I feel so sad for myself. The first girl who read this, when I read this the first time. Because I spent the whole book worried about Tamlin. And then I was like, I didn't really have a great time with that book. Yeah, girl, because you were looking the wrong direction the whole book. Anyway, Rhys grabs a sword as they're about to head down. Feyre's a little surprised because it's the only time she's seen him with a weapon, besides that dagger he tried to use to slit Amarantha's throat. And they talk about how Cassian could beat Rhys at, like, hand-to-hand combat because he's the best warrior that Rhys has encountered in any court. He's the coolest in any land. I love that Rhys is bragging on his besties, on his bros. Again, Dorian and Kale's bond in Throne of Glass, best friends for life. Cassian, Azriel, and Rhys, best friends for life. The girlies never get a friend. They come into this book and they've never had a friend in their life. The boys, they will be like, there's no male loneliness epidemic in a Sarah J. Maas novel. The boys have the house. The girls, they're not girls. They will learn. They all learn. They learn how to be girls, but they do not open the book as girls. Feyre asks about the scars on Azriel's hands, and Rhys explains that Azriel had 2, like, legitimate sons, and then Azriel, and the 11 years that Azriel lived with his father, he lived in this, like, dark room, and the boys would come and, like, essentially, like, torture Az. Okay. And at one point they, like, poured oil on his hand and lit them on fire. Cool. But don't even worry, Rhys killed them. As he should have. And then Feyre's like, hey, by the way, what the heck is Mor's job? And then Rhys says, Mor is who I will call in when the armies fail and Cassian and Azriel are both dead. To do what? The armies have failed. Cassian and Azriel are dead. Finally, Mor gets to come in? If she had that much power, maybe we should have brought her in before they killed Cassian and Azriel. Like, what is she gonna do? It is like a running theme that like nobody knows what Mor does. Everyone's like, Mor has like super special powers. What are they? And they're like, oh my gosh, they're so special. He also explains that she's like the court or overseer and manages the relationship between the Court of Nightmares and the Court of Dreams. Sometimes I'm so funny. My note here says, Mor is the Elizabeth Holmes of Prythian, gaslighting everyone into thinking she has a real job. Amren's job is like political advisor and walking library and doer of dirty work. If everyone else fails, he'd find a way to break the spell and unleash Amren. So, okay, here's the line. We have Cassian and Azriel doing normal military stuff. Then Mor comes in and does. And if that doesn't work, he's going to unleash Amren. He has to figure out how to. He's going to figure out how to, and then he's going to do it. I'm sorry. Again, I do think Rhys is bad at this. At, like, ruling. I love him to death, but, like, I'm sorry, that's a bad plan. What? They arrive at the bone gates to the prison. Feyre is, like, gripping this amulet super tightly, and she's, like, repeating to herself that, like, she's gonna be fine. She'll get out. And Rhys has a hand on her back, and he's just, like, reminding her to breathe. And then he's explaining how the prison works, kind of as they start their walk down into this mountain. And the guards themselves dwell within the rocks and only emerge for feeding times or to deal with, like, inmate issues that arise. And once a prisoner is sentenced here, they belong to the prison itself, and, like, even Rhys can't free them. He no longer has authority over them. And the vibes are, like, really yucky. Like, worse than Under the Mountain vibes. And Feyre is like, how long was Amren in here? And Rhys says, Azriel looked it up in our archives, and all he found was a vague mention that she was imprisoned before Prythian was split into courts. It predates our written word. And Feyre is like, you've never asked her specifically? And Rhys is like, why bother? She'll tell me when it's necessary. I don't know. Sometimes it's nice to ask questions about people, to seem like you're invested in their past and their story. And Feyre's like, where the heck did Amren even come from? And Rhys says, I don't know. There are legends that claim the world was born. There are legends that claim when the world was born, there were rips in the fabric between realms, that in the chaos of the forming, creatures from other worlds could walk through one of those rips and enter our world. But the rips closed at will, and the creatures could become trapped with no way home. We learn that Amren is, like, the only one of her kind, that there are some creatures that are from other worlds like the Suriel, but they've come in, like, at least a few of them. Amren is the only Amren. There's some other creatures in the prison that are also from other worlds, and they have been clearly looking for a way home for a long, long time. They've been hiking down the interior path for a while, and Rhys explains that the Bone Carver is caged near the roots of the mountain, so, like, far. They're holding hands, and Rhys is just a giddy in his heart. He's a giggling. He's like, oh, I'm just holding her hand. I'm just holding her hand as I walk down this little path. And Feyre's like, oh, by the way, like, what should I expect when we get to the Bone Carver? And Rhys is like, I don't know. Why are you asking me? No, he explains that the Bone Carver appears differently to everyone who sees him. He's, like, not a shapeshifter because he's not actually changing forms. He's just, like, changing appearances in your perception of him. And they reach the gates that are made of these, like, ornately carved bones. And then a small voice within says, I've carved the doors for every prisoner in this place, but my own door remains my favorite. He appears to Feyre as this, like, dark-haired, like, little boy around the age of, like, 8. And Rhys says, I'd have to agree. Rhys tosses an object towards the boy, the calf bone that made the final kill when Feyre slew the Midgard worm. And then Mr. Carver, Mr. Boney himself, invites him in his cell. And Bone Carver says, it's been an age since something new came into this world. And Feyre's like, hi. And the Bone Carver's like, are you frightened? And Feyre's like, yep. Rhys warned her that, like, she, like, cannot lie when she's down here. So she's just like, I am a little freaked. It's kind of bad vibes down here. The Bone Carver says, wait, hey, where did you go when you died? And Feyre says, a question for a question, as she'd been trained to say over breakfast. And Bone Carver turns to Rhys. You're always so much smarter than your forefathers. Tell me where you went, what you saw, and I will answer your question. Feyre has to, like, calm herself down to, like, think about the question so she's not, like, taken back to that place and thrown into a PTSD flashback. And Rhys is clearly uncomfortable because it's like as if he's like reliving that moment of her death with her. She reminds herself that she got out, she had lived. Feyre says, "It was dark, a different sort of dark than this place, but there was a thread, a tether, and I yanked on it, and suddenly I could see, not through my eyes, but his, and I knew I was dead, and this tiny scrap of spirit was all that was left of me, clinging to the thread of our bargain." And the Bone Carver is like, okay, fine, but like, did you see anything else? Like, was there other stuff? Could you see beyond that? And Feyre was like, no, there was only the bond in the darkness, and I followed the bond back, and I knew that home was on the other end of it. And the Bone Carver was like, were you afraid then? And Feyre said, all I wanted was to return to the people around me. I wanted it badly enough that I didn't have room for fear. The worst had happened, and the darkness was calm and quiet. It didn't not seem like a bad thing to fade into it, but I wanted to go home, so I followed the bond home. The Bone Carver was like, so there was no other world over there. And Feyre was like, if there was, or if there is, I like didn't see it. And the Bone Carver just like continues to ask questions about this until Rhys is like, hey, you've asked like a ton of questions. It is our turn now. And the Bone Carver is like, okay, sorry, I'm a little curious. This is kind of like a crazy situation that she finds herself in, where she was like dead for a while and now she's back and I can chat with her. Okay? Sue me for being a little curious. And then Feyre says, if there was no body, nothing, perhaps a bit of bone, would there be a way to resurrect that person, to grow a new body to put their soul into? And the Bone Carver asks, was the soul somehow preserved or contained? And Feyre says, yes. And the Bone Carver says, okay, there's no way unless long ago, before the High Fae, before man, there was a cauldron. They say all the magic was contained inside of it, that the world was born into it. But it fell into the wrong hands, and great and horrible things were done with it. Things were forged with it, such wicked things that the cauldron was eventually stolen back, and at great cost. It could not be destroyed, for it had made all things, and if it were broken, then life would cease to be. So hidden and forgotten. Only with that cauldron could something that is dead be reforged like that. And Rhys is like, okay, so where is the cauldron now? Where is it hidden? And the Bone Carver says, tell me a secret no one knows, Lord of Night, and I will tell you mine. And Rhys is like, my right knee hurts when it rains. Nobody else knows that. And the Bone Carver like laughs and he's like, oh my gosh, you were always my favorite. You were so silly. Very well. The cauldron was hidden at the bottom of a frozen lake in Lapland and vanished a long, long time ago. The 3 feet it stands on were separated from the cauldron and hidden in each of 3 temples. If it had gone missing, then the cauldron is probably active once more. And Rhys is like, do you happen to know who has the cauldron? And the Bone Carver says, promise me that you will give me her bones when she dies, and I will tell you. And Feyre's like, Bone Carver's like, no. I know you won't agree to that, Rhys. And then Rhys is like, okay, bye. Thanks so much for your help. We got to go. But then Feyre turns back, offering one last secret for the hope that the Bone Carver will reveal anything else that he knows. She says, there is a choice in death. I knew that I could drift away into dark, and I chose to fight, to hold on for a bit longer. Yet, I knew if I wanted, I could have faded. And maybe it would have been a new world, a new realm of rest and peace, but I wasn't ready for it. Not to go there alone. I knew that there was something else waiting beyond that dark. Something good. And then the Bone Carver says, you know who has the cauldron, Rhysand, who has been pillaging the temples. You only came here to confirm what you have long guessed. And Rhys goes, the King of Hybern. And the Bone Carver says, and the Bone Carver is like, confirms that. And the Feyre continues. Feyre's like, I have another thing I would like to confess. A little more for you, Bone Carver, as a treat. If that third fairy hadn't been Tamlin, I would have put the dagger in my own heart at the end. I knew there was no coming back from what I had done, and once I had broken their curse, once I knew I had saved them, I just wanted enough time to turn that dagger on myself. I only decided I wanted to live when she killed me, and I knew that I had not finished whatever it was that I had been born to do. I dared a glance at Rhys, and there was something like devastation on his beautiful face. It was gone in a blink. Even the Bone Carver said gently, with the cauldron, you could do other things than raise the dead. You could shatter the wall. And Feyre's like, is there a way to stop it? And Rhys is like, please stop telling this man secrets. This little nugget down here does not get any more of your secrets, Feyre. But Bone Carver gives them more information anyway. He tells them about the Book of Breathings, which is like a counter to the cauldron. It like counteracts the cauldron's power, but it's been split in 2. Half of it has been given to the Fae to keep safe, and then the other half has been given to the Mortal Queens. And the half that's been given to the Fae like is with Summer Court. And he goes on to explain, the book was believed harmless because it like calls to like, and that only That which was made can speak those spells and summon its power. No creature born of earth may wield it, so the high lords and humans dismissed it as little more than a historical heirloom. But if the book were in the hands of something reforged, you would have to test such a theory, of course, but it might be possible. So mortal... So essentially the implication being here that like perhaps Feyre could wield the Book of Breathings because she is something made. But we learned that the mortal queens have put like a curse on their portion. So unless the book is given freely by the mortal queens, it will like melt. So they need to convince the mortal queens to give them their half of the Book of Breathings. Feyre is like really exhausted from all of her confessions, and she can tell that like Rhys is like pretty upset by everything that kind of happened because just like being brought back to that under the mountain time, and also by like hearing how much like darkness Feyre had to endure, like was hard on poor baby Rhys. And they like start walking back up the like out of the Bone Carver's cave and, you know, gonna head up the mountain path. But before they get too far, the Bone Carver says to them, "I shall carve your death in here," referring to the bone Rhys gave him. I kind of think that's nice. Aw, so sweet. He's gonna carve Feyre's death for her. Aw, a little monument. I think it's cutie. Bone Carver is like my favorite. I think the Suriel is a lot of people's favorite little creature in this book, but the Bone Carver is mine personally. I love him. As they're like walking out, Feyre asks Rhys what he saw the Bone Carver as, and Feyre goes first and she explains that she saw a little boy around 8 years old with black hair and blue eyes. And Rhys says he saw Jurian, which is spooky ooky because clearly the Bone Carver knew who they were coming to ask about. Ooh, spooks and ooks. Hi. It's a new day. I have a high ponytail today. It's like very high. It is like I could go compete in our all-star cheer competition high today. And I don't want to talk about it. That's just like where the ponytail landed. And I probably have like a little halo of flyaways. And that's just what it is. Anyway, we're back in ACOMAF. The girlies are back. They head back to... They were just at the Bone Carver. They head back to, I think, House of Wind to go like report what they found out. And more Cassian and Azriel are waiting for them, but Amren is not, which like Feyre's like, okay, I'm gonna have to find Amren later and give her her amulet back. But for now, it's just them, and Rhys kind of explains what the Bone Carver told them about the cauldron and how like the feet are being stolen probably, and that they need to get the Book of Breathings. And Az is like, okay, let me reach out to my contacts in the Summer Court to see if they have any like insight on Book of Breathings, because again, he's the spy master, so he has people in all of the courts. And Rhys is like, no, this information is too important. And this kind of hurts Az's feelings. He's a sensitive guy, and he's like, I do a good job. Like I'm not using spies that are not trustworthy. But Rhys is like, we're just like not taking any risks, Az, buddy. I know you do a really good job. But Az is like a little sad that he can't contribute. And then he's like, okay, so the thing is, I do consider the attack on the temple like an act of war. So I think I am justified in now trying to infiltrate Hybern's lands. We like can't do that yet, obviously, because like we do not have the capacity. We haven't done the intel, and also we don't have the Book of Breathings yet. We don't want to go into Hybern's land until we have the Book of Breathings. I like shouldn't have a ponytail. It is making me like way too head bobby. Azriel's like, yeah, for sure I can start doing some recon and figuring out like what kinds of wards and shields they have so I can figure out what I would need to get past them. But it'll probably be a while. And Rhys is like, for sure, that's why you work on that now while we start to hunt for the book. And the plan is to use Feyre to get the book because she is magic from the Summer Court, and say it with me, like calls to like. So she should be able to track it down. And Feyre's like, hey guys, we don't know that for sure. Like, I know you're like really taking, it's like really important that this works. And like, we don't know that I can't do that. And Rhys is like, okay, well, don't even worry. I have a field trip planned where we'll test it. A field trip from Rhys School. I need you to find a valuable object of mine that has been missing for like a really long time. We're going to the Weaver. And Feyre's like, who's the Weaver? And Azriel is like, okay, the Weaver is this ancient, wicked creature who should remain unbothered. You should find another way to test her abilities. And Rhys is like, let's ask Feyre. Feyre, do you want to go see the Weaver? I know we've told you no information about her, except Az just said something scary and spooky, but it's your choice. And I want to let Rhys know that it's important to give informed consent, which means that, like, you need to know what you're signing up for. Rhys loves to give a choice without giving context. He says, no, you get to pick. If she doesn't have the information, she's just gambling. She's just playing a little risky game. Anyway, everyone except Rhys is like, Feyre, don't go to the Weavers. But then Rhys is like, also, Feyre, you have a job title. I came up with your job title. I was working on it last night, typing up the official job description. You are going to be the emissary to the Night Court for the human realm. And Azriel's like, okay, well, that was a position we haven't had for 500 years. And Rhys is like, okay, well, we do now. Please stop. I'm giving this girl I have a crush on a job. It's my company. It's my government. I can do some nepotism to try to win me a girlfriend. And I don't need you stepping on my toes about it, Az. Rhys does not say all that. I think it's implied, but he does say the human world is going to need to be prepared if the King of Hybern plans to shatter the wall. And we need the other half of the Book of Breathings from the Mortal Queens, and then we need someone who's like kind of neutral, who kind of exists in both worlds, to act as kind of the diplomat between those two things. And Feyre's like, okay, we can use my family's house as like a neutral ground. She's like, my sisters are gonna hate this so much, but like, it's like the best solution. And Cassian's like, we can't ask that of your family. Like, that's kind of a big ask. And Feyre's like, it'll be fine. And Moore is like, you know what, Cassian? It is a big ask, but like, if we don't have time to communicate with these mortal queens, like, the lands will run with blood. So, gotta do what you gotta do. And Feyre's like, no, it's totally fine. Like, we'll do it. My sisters aren't gonna love it, but they'll be okay. And Rhys is like, okay, then it's settled. None of them look particularly excited. And he's like, okay, once Feyre Darling returns from the Weaver, we will bring Hybern to its knees. That night, Feyre has another nightmare, but it doesn't wake her or make her puke. So that's kind of nice. And in the morning, like before dawn, she is awoken to Rhys knocking on her door and telling her to hurry up and get ready because he wants to leave before the sun is fully up. And Rhys is like, chop chop, time is of the essence. The King of Hybern realizes that someone is searching for the Book of Breathings to nullify the powers of his cauldron, and we know his agents will be searching for it too. It's like, we do not have a moment to spare. And Feyre's like, you have waited 2.5 months to do anything. You kind of have known this is happening since we left Under the Mountain. And Rhys is like, well, if you had agreed to work with me 2 months ago, I would have taken you right to the Bone Carver. I did an abbreviation. I didn't know what I meant. Well, I would have taken you right to the Bone Carver and to like see if my suspicions were confirmed about your talents, but like not everything went to plan. And so I was like waiting on you. Rhys, you did not really express the level of urgency that she really should have taken this with, since now she can't like have 30 seconds to brush her teeth. But before you were like, take your time to decide. A little sus. And Feyre's like, oh, this is why you insisted I learn how to read. And Rhys is like, I mean, like, you learning how to read is just in general helpful. It's something that you needed to know how to do. But also, yes, this was a little bit of a motive. Do you blame me for it? And Feyre's like, no, but like, please inform me of future schemes. Please keep me informed. And Rhys doesn't. Spoiler for the rest of the series, Rhys has a little bit of Aelin Galathinius complex, in that he does not like to fully reveal a scheme. He likes to keep a lot of stuff a secret. Until he knows the solution, he doesn't want to talk to everyone about the problem. It's maybe his worst quality. They have some flirty moments about Feyre and how she has like a lot of like lacy little things to sleep in. Flirty. Rhys is helping Feyre like get ready to leave, and Feyre's not allowed to bring any weapons, but she can bring knives because the Weaver will already have knives in her house from cooking, so she won't like see them as foreign. And Rhys helps her get in the knife belt, and he's like kneeling in front of her, and oh my gosh. I don't know. There's something about it. And then Rhys is kind of giving her instructions about what she is to do when she gets the Weaver. Do not make a sound. Do not touch anything with the object she took from me. If we were correct about your powers, if the Bone Carver wasn't lying to us, then you and the object shall have the same imprint, thanks to the preserving spells I placed on it long ago. You are one and the same. She will not notice your presence as long as you only touch it. You will be invisible to her. And Feyre's like, is she like totally blind then? She won't be able to see me? And Rhys is like, yeah, for sure. Like, she's blind, but like her other senses are like very lethal. Like, she will find you. Like, be quiet, get the object, get out of there quickly. His hands are like on her thighs. He's kneeling in front of her. His hands are on her thighs as he's having this little combo with her. Okay. I just want you to picture that in your brain. Feyre says, and if she notices me? And Rhys says, then we'll learn precisely how skilled you are. That Feyre kind of gives him the stink eye, and she's like, the other option is you just get locked in the House of Wind all the time. Don't worry, he'll use that strategy later. Not with Feyre. And then Feyre's like, why not just go get this item yourself if it's so important to you? And Rhys is like, well, because the Weaver knows me. And it's like against the rules for any of the High Lords to interact with the Weaver. She like exists in this place that is outside of any of the courts. And so they're not allowed to interact with her. And he's like, there's a lot of actually like treasures in her hoard. Many have been kept for millennia. Most will never be retrieved because the High Lords do not dare to be caught, thanks to laws that protect her and thanks to her wrath. And when regular people go and thieve from her, most of the time they don't make it back. The High Lords do not dare be caught, thanks to laws that protect her, thanks to her wrath. Any thieves on their behalf, either they do not return, or they are never sent, for fear of it leading back to their High Lord. But you, she does not know you. You belong to every court. So I am your huntress and your thief, Feyre says. His hands slide down to cup the backs of my knees, as he said with a roguish grin, you are my salvation, Feyre. This is actually one of those lines that I can like picture the like audiobook narrator, because I've seen so like vividly in my head, because I've seen like so many edits that include this line, because it's really good. It's a really good one. They went out into the woods, and again, this is a land that is like not in any specific court. It's like this no man's land in Prythian, and it's a very dangerous place in general. There are a lot of like monstrous creatures that live here, but the Weaver is the top of the food chain. And Feyre's like, hey, why are we disturbing her for like a test? You're like testing me, and you're sending me against this like super vicious thing. And you said even Amarantha didn't bother like messing with her. And Rhys is like, yeah, that's a great question. Cassian was really mad about it, actually. Cassian actually threatened to punch me. And Feyre's like, why did Cassian threaten that? Like, I don't know Cassian very well. We had like one dinner together. And Rhys is like, he probably wants to sleep with you. And Feyre's like, you're a pig. And Rhys is like, you could, you know, if you needed to move on in a physical sense. I'm sure Cassian would be more than happy to oblige. I have a strange feeling that knowing what I know, and what I imagine you will soon know, Cassian would not be happy to oblige. But then Feyre and like Rhys go back and forth, and Feyre's like, tell him to come into my room tonight then. And Rhys is like, if you survive this test. Then Feyre says, you seem pleased by the idea that I won't. And Rhys says, quite the opposite, Feyre. He prowled to where I stood on the stone. I was almost eye level with him. The forest went even quieter, the trees seeming to lean closer as if to catch every word. I'll let Cassian know you're open to his advances. I made to jump off the stone, but he gripped my chin, the movement too fast to detect. His words were a lethal caress. As he said, did you enjoy the sight of me kneeling before you? I knew he could hear as my heart ratcheted into a thunderous beat. I gave him a hateful little smirk anyway, yanking my chin out of his touch and leaping off the stone. I might have aimed for his feet, and he might have shifted out of the way just enough to avoid it. Isn't that all you males are good for anyway? But the words were tight, near breathless. Okay. I do think about this line probably every other week. I love this, like the combination of those, like they're kind of like two scenes, but like where he's like helping her put on these like leathers and the knife balls, and then when he points it out, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. But Feyre knows this is like kind of just a trick to keep her from getting too nervous. He's like trying to like cool her off, similar way that he did under the mountain. He like is trying to keep her chill. And then she spots the Weaver's cottage. It is small, whitewashed cottage. Looks very like mortal, very like typical. And from the cottage inside, she hears like humming, and she's like, this is the kind of place where if you were like lost in the woods, you'd be like, oh my gosh, phew, somewhere safe to stop. Like it is clearly like part of the trap is the how normal it looks. Rhys mouths good luck, and Feyre starts towards the cottage. The cottage itself is like pretty perfect. It is like not dirty, it is not messy. There's some part of her inside that's starting to like freak out and like recognize it for a trap. It is designed to ensnare humans very clearly, but Feyre thinks to herself, I am not prey. As I eased into that door, I was not a mouse, I was a wolf. The Weaver is inside, and she's singing a song about two sisters, essentially like an older one murdering a younger one. And Feyre like eases the front door open. It like doesn't squeak at all, doesn't make any noises. She enters this room lined with floor to ceiling shelves with like so much stuff. Every like shelf is just like packed with like trinkets. And the Weaver is in the other corner spinning at her spinning wheel. She looks like a young woman. She has this like long dark hair that like covers her face as she like leans over and spins this thread. And the thread looks like white wool, but Feyre is pretty sure it's something much spookier and grosser. Feyre's skating the room, waiting for her magic to lead her to something. She's like getting freaked out. She knows she needs to move quickly, but like she's not feeling anything. And for a second, she thinks that Rhys may have pranked her. Tamlin loved to talk about how Rhys loves a prank, and so this idea has been planted in her nog. And then she feels it, like a tap on her shoulder, this little like tug of magic, and she follows it to a shelf and finds a ring that is like twisted strands of silver and gold with a sapphire and at its center. And she grabs the pearl or the ring from the shelf, and the moment she touches it, the weaver stops singing. Feyre is like, does it freezes for a second? She's like, maybe she's just like switching songs. She's not. They're switching songs. Feyre starts like backing towards the door. She's like, okay, I gotta get out of here. But the door slams closed, and there's not a knob on the inside. And she goes over to the window, and she's like trying to break the window, but the window is like clearly some sort of like bulletproof glass, like something that's not gonna break. And Feyre finally sees the face of the weaver, and she's got these like hollow pits for eyes, and her skin is like clinging to bone, spooky ooky. And the weaver is like, what are you? What is like all but unlike all? Feyre's thinking to herself, I do not want to die, which we love that for her. She's been a little depressy girly, so like we're happy that she's wanting to survive. And she thinks to herself again, she is a wolf. She will bite when cornered. And she picks up a candle that is burning in the corner of the room, and she throws it at the wall of threads and lights them all on fire. And she thinks about how she's like freeing whatever has been like trapped in those threads. And then she starts to climb up the chimney, because that's the only way she can see to get out. And the chimney is like coated in like grease from cooking, and like we know the weaver is probably eating roadie snacks. And it's like really gross. But she's like climbing her way up, but then she gets stuck. Her like shoulder gets like wedged in there, and she looks down, and the weaver's face is like below her in the chimney. Oh my gosh, this would have been so spooky ooky. I feel like we were so robbed of the TV show. The ACOTAR TV show is like officially canceled, and it's so devastating because like this would be gorgy. You know, I'm a bigger advocate for the Throne of Glass TV show. Like, give it to me now. Give it to me now. I would pay $50 an episode to watch the Throne of Glass TV show. But ACOTAR would have been great too. Would have happily sat there and watched it all. And this would have been a great scene. The weaver says to her, what little mouse is climbing my chimney? Feyre's freaking out because she's stuck. And the weaver is like so close. And she's like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And then she thinks to herself, stop. The word came out of the darkness in my mind, and the voice was my own. Stop, I said. Breathe. Think. The weaver came closer, brick crumbling under her hands. She'd climb up like a spider, like I was a fly in her web. Stop. And that word quieted everything. I mouthed it. Stop, stop, stop. I had survived the worm, survived Amarantha, and I had been granted gifts, considerable gifts, like strength. I was strong. I was not a pet, not a doll, not an animal. I was a survivor, and I was strong. I would not be weak or helpless again. I could not be broken or tamed. And so she grabs a brick like out of the like chimney that's like loose, and she chucks it down at the weaver's face, and then she starts like pushing her way up the chimney, like skin ripping underneath her leathers as she like just like forces her way through this chimney that is getting narrower towards the top. She makes it onto the roof, which is thatched not with hay, as she originally thought, but with hair. And the weaver emerges from the front door, and she's like bleeding from where Feyre's like conked her in the head with a brick. And she's shouting, where are you? Where are you? And then Feyre starts like running through the trees. The trees are like close enough to the house where she can like climb them. And she's trying to find Rhys, like get close enough to Rhys, because Rhys had to stay like a distance away from the weaver's cottage. And she finally finds him just like lounging in a nearby tree branch, and she points at him and shouts, you! And Rhys just winnows them back to the House of Wind, and they find themselves like back in the war room with Cassian and Amren. And Amren is like, ew, you smell disgusting. You smell like a barbecue. And Cassian's like, you killed her? And Rhys is like, she didn't kill her, but based on how much shouting was coming from the weaver, I'm dying to know what Feyre darling did do. And Feyre, realizing that she's like covered in the fat of cooked people, does just like throw up all over the floor. Amren gets rid of the vom and gets the grease cleaned up of Feyre, even though Feyre can, like, she's like, I need a bath. Even though it's magically gone, she needs to scrub her skin. You know how the vibes are. And Feyre explains she had to climb out of the chimney and chucked a brick in the weaver's face, which is probably why she was like so unhappy. And then Amren is like, where were you? Why were you uselessly unhelpful to Feyre? And Rhys was like, I was far enough away so the weaver could detect me, obviously. And Feyre was like, I really could have used your help. It would have been helpful to have some backup. And Rhys is like, you found a way to help yourself. And then Feyre realizes that he must have been listening to her panic through the bond. And it becomes clear that like Rhys had a second motivation for this little field trip, is not only did he want to get this ring back, but he needed to check Feyre's magic, and he wanted to like help her like relearn how to control her panic. He's also like the school counselor at the Rhys school. So like he's in charge of mental health of all of the students. He has a lot of hats that he has to wear. It like truly is a high stakes environment to sort of test that sort of stuff. You know, maybe we could have like tried some like calming breaths in a less tricky situation. You know, I feel like we could have done it. Cassian says to Rhys, "You're a prick," which is true, correct. And then Feyre tells Cassian she wants to learn how to fight and get strong. And Cassian's like, "Okay, but you're going to be calling me a prick pretty darn fast if we train. I don't know anything about training humans, how breakable your bodies were. He adds with a wince. "We'll figure it out." "Okay, Cassian, this was your suggestion, so now you can't act like it was a bad idea. You were like, let me train you." And Feyre's like, "You can train me." And Cassian's like, "I'm not so sure." And Feyre's like, "I don't want my only option to be running away." And Amren says, "It kept you alive today. Like, don't second guess it too much. Like, it was a helpful thing." And then Rhys explains that the ring was his mother's, and it was a keepsake that she gave to the Weaver for safekeeping so that he wouldn't waste it. Don't worry, we'll come back to this. And Feyre is like, "Okay, this is stupid. I want to go home. Take me back to the townhouse so I can take a bath." And they get back to the townhouse, and Rhys is like, "What about training your other gifts?" And Feyre's like, "I think you and I would shred each other to bits. Like, I don't think we could train together. Like, you drive me nuts every time we hang out." And Rhys is like, "Oh my gosh, it'll be so fun. Let's do it right now. Get past my shields." And Feyre is like, "I'm tired. I want to go take a bath. They have already run it. It's going to get cold." And Rhys is like, "The bath won't get cold. Just like try to get past my shields. Do it. It'll be so fast. You can feel your magic under your skin, can't you? Like, it wants to do this. It'll be fun. It'll be fun." And Feyre is like, "Okay, I can feel the magic. What if I do? Like, I don't want to do this regardless." And Rhys says, "I'm surprised Ianthe didn't carve you up on an altar to see what your power looked like inside of you." And then he kind of talks about Ianthe a little bit and talks about how he doesn't like her because the high priestesses are like a perversion of what they once were. And Ianthe is one of the worst of them. They all are kind of like power hungry and have infiltrated themselves into various courts. And Feyre asks some questions, and Rhys is like, "If you get past my shields, I'll show you. But you got to get past them first." Feyre tries, but like not that hard because she's like tired. She like just climbed up, she like just dealt with stuff. She had to wake up early. She was just covered in grease. She just wants to go take a bath and take a nap. Leave her alone, Rhys. But Rhys shan't. And Feyre's like, "I've had enough tests for the day." And Rhys goes, the high priestesses, Rhys kind of explains that they've entrenched themselves into like a lot of courts, but none of them ended up under the mountain. And he doesn't love that vibe. Although like none of your pals ended up under the mountain either. Whatever. He's like, they're not all evil, but like they're dangerous. And Feyre like is like, "Okay, why? Tell me more." Rhys refuses, and she realizes that like it's like a trap. He's trying to like lure her to like try to get her to use her magic. She tries to get through his wall again, and it doesn't work, but then he opens up his mind just a little, and she slips past. And she sees Ianthe spread out naked across the bed, and Feyre is like, "Okay, I actually need to go." I don't actually want to see this memory. But Rhys has closed the little door he opened in his mind, and he like forces her to watch the rest of the scene, which is Rhys coming in and finding Ianthe, telling her to leave, Ianthe not listening, and Rhys being like, "Isn't your allegiance with another court?" And Ianthe being like, "My allegiance lies with the future of Prythian and the power in this land. Do you know what a union between us could do for Prythian in our world? Our offspring could rule Prythian." And Rhys kicks her out, and as she's like going to leave, she like reaches and like grabs Rhys's junk between his legs. Rhys just uses some magic to break her hand, and she like obviously is unhappy about this. She's like screaming out in pain, and Rhys says, "Do not you touch me or any other male in my court again, or like things will be worse." And Ianthe's like, "You'll regret this," and then she leaves. That's the end of the scene. Rhys allows Feyre to exit his mind. Then as soon as she's like back in her body, he says to her, "Rule 1, don't go into someone's mind unless you can hold the door open behind you. A Damati might leave their mind spread wide open for you and then shut you inside and turn you into their willing slave. So like, be careful." And Rhys tries to give Feyre another rule, but Feyre was like, "Wait, no. Let's talk about what I just saw with Ianthe. Like, that's not good. She seems like bad news." And that's, I kind of warned you guys about Ianthe last video because she did have sensual lips. I don't know if I actually wound up cutting that part because it felt a little too spoilery, but like, Ianthe is bad news. We should have known it from the jump. She has sensual lips. You know who else has sensual lips? The Valg. Watch out for him. Rhys then explains, 100 years ago, I allowed her to visit the Court of Nightmares. She said she wanted to build connections between the High Priestesses and the Night Court. I heard rumors, but she was young and I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. And Feyre's like, she didn't act like that in the spring court. But then she thinks about it and she realizes how like weird Lucien acts around Ianthe, and then like second guesses that. Like, oh, maybe she is acting weird, just like not to me, because I couldn't really help her get what she wanted. And Rhys says, rule number 2, if you go into someone else's mind, is like you have to be prepared to see things you do not want to see. And Feyre thinks. Only 50 years later, Amarantha had come and done exactly to Rhys what he had wanted to kill Ianthe for. He'd let it happen to him, to keep them safe, to keep Azriel and Cassian from the nightmare that would haunt them forever, from enduring any more pain than what they'd suffered as children. And when Feyre looks back over her shoulder to like talk to Rhys, he's gone. And then she goes and she takes a bath and she thinks about everything that has happened over the last 48 hours, because that's how long she's been gone from spring court. Like, a lot has happened very, very quickly. The next morning, they still haven't heard from the summer courts, probably because it's been like 10 seconds. So they decide to go to the mortal lands. And Feyre is like sitting in her bedroom with Mor, kind of like explaining what mortal outfits what she should wear to like blend in the mortal world, and like explains that like, you know, women in the mortal world tend to dress more modestly and typically wear like layers, and Mor's like, those outfits seem like you wouldn't really be able to move around much in them. And Feyre's like, well, like nowadays mostly women just get like married and have babies, especially if they're wealthy. And Mor's like, the Court of Nightmares is pretty similar vibes. And she talks about how like virginity is like heavily prized and auctioned off to the highest bidder often. And she explains like kind of her story. We kind of get Mor's backstory. We learn that she was born to like one of the most powerful families in the Court of Nightmares, and she is the most powerful in her family, even amongst the boys. And they sensed it from the time she was like pretty much born. And she hoped this would mean that like she would be kind of exempt from the typical womanly expectations, that no one would want to marry her because she's so powerful. But instead, it like created her to be like this sort of prize that like everyone was after. All of the ruling families in the Hewn city wanted her. And her parents were like really excited. They were like, oh my gosh, this is so great for us. This is going to give us a really like beneficial like alliance with some other families. And they really didn't care about Mor and her like choice in the matter. And she's like, so I actually don't think I'm going to go to the mortal worlds today because it like reminds me too much of where I came from. And I just don't think I will be like a beneficial ally. Like, I'll come when the mortal queens come because I'll be an important part of the conversation, but to lay the groundwork with your sisters, like, I don't think I'll honestly be that helpful. Then she kind of explains that Cassian like helped her leave the Court of Nightmares, and he was like really helpful, like Rhys was as well, but like Rhys is coming from a place of power, so like it was really not at a ton of cost to himself. But Cassian, if Cassian had been caught, could like have very easily like been killed because he was a low-born bastard. And then Mor says about Cassian, he has no idea that he's worth more than any of the other males I met in that court, outside of it, him and Azriel, that is. Just like sweet. She's just talking about how like lovely of a man Cassian is. Feyre gets ready, and then as she's saying goodbye to Mor, she says to her, I'd like my sisters to meet you. Maybe not today, but if you ever feel like it, I want them to hear your story and know that there is a special strength. As I spoke, I realized I needed to hear it too. Know it, too. A special strength in enduring such dark trials and hardships and still remaining warm and kind, still willing to trust and reach out. And then as she's like about to leave, she turns back and she says one more thing. She says, I'm sorry if I was not as welcoming to you as you were when I arrived in the night court. I was trying to learn how to adjust. But Mor hopped off the bed and opened the door for me and said, there are good days and hard days for me, even now. Don't let the hard days win. Sweet. This is like a sweet moment. Will we ever maintain this energy? No. Feyre and the boys are headed to the mortal lands, but Feyre decides she doesn't want to fly with Rhysand because she is thinking about him kneeling in front of her, putting those leathers on her. And like, same girly, I am also thinking about that, but she like just doesn't want to be that close to him. And they do have to fly for a bit, so they're going to winnow to like a spot like in the sea, like above the sea, and then fly over the wall. They can't like winnow over the wall. And so that's what they do. She winds up flying with Az. She's like, I'm going to fly with Az. And Rhys and Cassian are both like, why? And Azriel's like, okay. And he's like more than willing to carry her. And as they like fly, they're like kind of chatting as they fly over the coastline about how neither of them really feel like they fit in anywhere, because like Feyre is like torn between the mortal lands and the Fey lands, and Azriel is like this, he's like very high up in the night court, but like he still very much sees himself as this like kind of low-born man. Anyway, they fly and Feyre says, oh, it's my home. Like, the mortal lands are, like, still the place that she considers her home. As they're flying over to her sister's estate, there's snow everywhere. It's been a year since she killed that wolf in the woods. Her family's estate is looking gorgy. It's still, like, decorated for, like, winter. I don't know if it's decorated for the winter solstice, because we know that happened, like, a couple months ago. But it's decorated with, like, holly. Looks like Christmas vibes, I'm thinking. You know, goes up to the front door, rings the doorbell, or pulls the doorbell, because it's not electric. And the boys hide somewhere. They, like, don't come with her to the door. She, like, wants to go and talk to her sisters first, but she knows they're probably not far off. Elaine opens the door and immediately tells the servants to bring tea to the drawing room. Feyre has a hood kind of pulled low over her face. And then Nesta arrives in the doorway, and Nesta, like, mean mugs her like she's a ghost. Okay. We're going to have some conversations about Nesta Empathy Hour. Is everyone ready for Nesta Empathy Hour? Great. I want us to consider, so it's probably been about 6 months since she was here last, maybe even a little bit more. Last Nesta heard from her, Feyre was headed back to the Feylands to, like, rescue her, like, Spring Court High Lord in a very dangerous situation. Feyre never sent a letter. Like, Nesta was like, don't bother coming back, like, I'm good. But, like, she could have sent a letter being like, made it out. It was a bad time, but good now. Like, don't worry about me. I think Nesta assumed she was dead. It was very mean for Feyre not to send a letter. I understand she can't read or write. But, like, she could have transcribed one. She could have sent word to her sisters that she was okay. And I think some of what we're seeing from Nesta here, am I projecting? Yeah, we don't actually know what Nesta's thinking here. But I think some of it comes from the fact that, like, there is this, like, worry over Feyre, and she, like, Nesta is, like, truly terrible at, like, channeling this worry into, like, appropriate messaging, and so it comes off as just this, like, coldness and this meanness, because I think, one, she's hurt by the fact that Feyre didn't tell them she was alive. That's mean. And also just, like, worried about the situation that Feyre now finds herself in and how dangerous it is, not only for Feyre, but for Elaine and for, like, the entirety of the human realm. It, like, is a very difficult situation. And I think Nesta, when anything seems, like, scary, gets just meaner. So, okay, Nesta empathy moment over. They go into a drawing room and they sit down, and Feyre immediately, like, feels like she is a wolf that they've let into their house. Like, she feels too dangerous and too big for this space. Nesta's looking older. She's like, she looks at Nesta and she realizes that Nesta looks older. Like, she's like, nothing about her physically had changed, but, like, her eyes look older. Maybe that's because she spent, like, the past 5-6 months grieving her sister. Maybe that's because she assumed you were dead. That would age you a little bit. Like, Feyre, you didn't send a letter, bestie girl. Just to be like, hey, everything's good now. It was kind of rude. But Nesta explains that their dad is on the continent doing some trading, and he's also attending a summit about the threat above the wall. Elaine is like, we are so happy to see you alive. Like, we thought... And Feyre pulls her hood off finally and reveals that she's Fae. She's like, I was dead, but now I'm reborn as a Fae. And Elaine starts shaking, and Nesta very slightly, like, moves herself so she is now between Elaine and Feyre. It's a lot to drop on people. Like, give them a second to process. But Feyre's like, I need you to listen. And she tells them her entire story, her story of the time under the mountain, and then what happened in the months afterwards, and how Hybern is coming, and how she needs to have a place to meet with the mortal queens. And Nesta's like, no, find somewhere else. I don't want them in the house or near Elaine. Like, it's, like, too dangerous. And Feyre's like, Nesta, please, there's nowhere else. Nowhere I can go without someone hunting me, crucifying me. And Nesta goes, and what of us? If the people around us learn that we are Fae sympathizers, are we any better than the children of the blessed? Then any standing, any influence we have is gone. And Elaine's wedding. And Feyre looks and sees the engagement ring on Elaine's finger, and she is, like, a little hurt. The fact she didn't know how they again thought she was dead. She goes, wedding. And Nesta explains that, like, in 5 months, Elaine is, so in the spring, Elaine is marrying a lord's son, and his father is, like, notorious for hunting down Fae and killing them when they cross the wall. So they cannot be associated with the Fae in any way. There, like, cannot be a meeting there. And Feyre's like, what about me? What about you, girl? You went to the Spring Court with your High Lord. What about you? Sorry. Nesta just doesn't say anything. And then Elaine says, if we don't help Feyre, there won't be a wedding. We'll keep it a secret. Send the servants away. We'll send them on holiday. Father won't be back until the summer anyway. No one will know. Feyre gave and gave for years. Let us now help her. Help others. And Feyre's like, please, there's like no other way. Like, I promise if there was, I would take it. I don't love the idea of putting you guys at risk, but like, this is, and Nesta says, okay, we'll send the servants away tomorrow. And Feyre's like, no, we don't have time. You need them to leave immediately. Why? I like don't understand why they need to leave immediately. They haven't even sent a letter to the Mortal Queens yet. I guess it's so the girlies can meet like Rhysand and Az and Cassian at their house, but like, I feel like we could have just done that sneakily. Could we have sent the servants to the other side of the house? Now they have no servants. They live in a big giant house and they have no one to help them. It's also a little demanding. Like, you just got here 10 minutes ago. We thought you were dead. And now you're like, get everybody out of here for an undetermined amount of time. And then she's a little annoyed anytime they're like, this seems, and by they, I mean Nesta, anytime Nesta's like, this is annoying, this is obnoxious, you're being rude. Feyre's like, the good of humanity rests on this. And Nesta's like, okay, you just got here. I just don't understand why I should be invested in this yet. So Elaine goes to go talk to the servants and leaving Feyre and Nesta alone in the room. And Feyre talks to Nesta about the boy that Elaine is marrying. And Nesta explains that, like, she's not sure if he's good, but she knows that Elaine loves him and that Elaine thinks he's good. And Feyre's like, okay, but what do you think? And Nesta is like, his father built a wall of stone around their estate so high even the trees can't reach over it. I think it looks like a prison. And Feyre's like, well, have you said anything to Elaine? And Nesta's like, no, the son, Grayson, does seem like kind. And he does seem like really smitten with Elaine. Like, they really are cute together. I think they're good together, but it is the father that, like, worries me. He sees the money she has to offer, their estate, and his crusade against the Fae. But, like, he's old, he's going to die soon. I think she will be okay to endure it. Then Nesta turns the questions on Feyre. She's like, you went through all of that for your High Lord, and now you're with someone else? You're at a new court? And Feyre is like, he wanted to cage me. He had a lot of trauma. I understand that, but also, like, there was a lot I needed to do. Like, this is important to me. Then Feyre's like, okay, do you want to meet him? We can bring him on in. A few hours later, the servants have all cleared out. As soon as they do, Azriel, Cassian, and Rhys appear at the door. I like to picture what they were doing in the meantime. So they've just spent a couple hours and they're like hiding in the woods nearby the house. And I do think this is probably mostly Cassian just like teasing Rhys like the whole time. And probably they threw snow at each other. I think there was a lot of snow throwing that happened in those hours. Nesta, Elaine, and Feyre are meeting with the boys in the dining room. Rhysand is like impressed with how quickly Elaine was able to get all these servants out of the house. Like, she made quick work of them. And Feyre says, my sister Elaine can convince anyone to do anything with a few smiles. And then I put a note here. This is like not a spoiler, but it does talk about like later books in terms of like a theory. It's totally just a theory. There's nothing concrete connected to this, but I absolutely love the theory that like Elaine is evil. The next book we're supposed to get is supposed to be Elaine's book, and I've heard some people say that it would be fun if Elaine was evil, and then that book we find out like she's like smiling at everyone, but actually the whole time behind the scenes she's been doing evil. She's been up to schemes, and I love that for her. It gives me kind of like Perry the Platypus vibes. Let me explain. Like where she has like a whole secret other life. I love that sort of thing. That'd be I don't know how you do it tonally with the rest of these books if Elaine like secretly this whole time has been up to other schemes. We like learn behind the scenes Elaine has been the one pulling the strings. Even if she wasn't evil, I think that would be fun. We know very little about Elaine. I am like so neutral about Elaine as a character because like truly, girl, give us nothing. Except be nice. She's my sister's favorite character. I have two sisters, only one of whom has read the ACOTAR series, but she's like such an Elaine girl, and she is the middle child. I'm the eldest, and I'm a Nesta girl. The youngest refuses to read ACOTAR, so. But she would be the Feyre. But I also think Feyre wouldn't be the biggest ACOTAR fan. You know who would be? Nesta. Nesta would love ACOTAR more than Feyre would. Cassian's looking around at how nice their house is, and Feyre thinks about how Tamlin is like the reason they have this nice house. Like Tamlin did provide them this house, and like Tamlin is good, even though he is not doing well. And then she explains to the boys where her father is, and then brings them into the dining room to meet with her sisters. Her sisters are waiting in the dining room. She's bringing them into the house. Feyre goes into the dining room and looks at both of her sisters and realizes, like, for the first time that she's going to have to watch her sisters grow old and die. Like, she's immortal, and so their lives will be such a small portion of hers because she will outlive them by, like, hundreds and hundreds of years, and she's going to have to watch them, like, wither away while she stays pretty much the same. And that, I think that, like, hits her in, like, in that moment, as she, like, sees them standing there waiting to be introduced to these boys. Her sisters like definitely stiffen up at the presence of these boys. Rhys has magicked his wings away, but obviously Cass and Azriel still have their wings out because they don't go anywhere. And Feyre notes that she's impressed that Elaine didn't faint. Okay, rude. Elaine can stand around. I actually don't think we've seen Elaine faint about anything. Elaine is just like a flower, but she's not a delicate flower. And then Nesta again puts herself between Elaine and the boys, and Feyre introduces them. And then notes that like neither of her sisters bowed. Okay. Sorry. This moment, I think, okay. Let's for a second talk about the Nesta Rhys dynamic, because I think this is one thing that people like really struggle with in the books, because they people hate the way Rhysand is depicted in Nesta's book, because Nesta's book Silver Flames is from Nesta's perspective, and she has a very different view on Rhys than Feyre does, obviously. I just like think the dynamic between Rhys and Nesta makes sense. I actually think they're incredibly similar personality types, and I think if Nesta and Rhys had met each other outside of like the context of Feyre, I actually think they might be good friends. In my version of the story that I like to imagine in my nog sometimes as just like a fun exercise in my brain, Nesta went to what is the main character of the series, so she like wound up with Tamlin and went to Under the Mountain, and I think her and Rhys would become like pals. I think they would be buddies in another situation, but I think because of the power dynamic between Nesta and Rhys and the power struggle that is like constantly happening between the two of them, I think it makes sense that they hate each other like a lot, because they do. Because like honestly, if my little sister was introducing me to her friend boyfriend, and she was like, hey, why aren't you bowing to him? Excuse me? What do you mean, why am I not bowing to him? I don't care if he's literally the Prince of England. I don't care if he's the King of England. My baby sister dating King Charles? I'm not bowing. It's never happening, girly. Also, I'm calling the police. That would be weird. I mean, she's an adult, but I want you to know, I love them both. And I love that they hate each other, because I think it makes sense. Rhys is like, thank you so much for your hospitality and your generosity, but the vibes are terrible. And Elaine tries to smile, but she's really scared. Nesta is like, the cook left dinner on the table. We should eat it before it gets cold. Honestly, that she could have said a lot worse things. Is that super polite? Nice? No, but it's not mean. They go sit at the table. Nesta sits at the head, Elaine and Feyre on her left and right, and then it's Cassian next to Elaine, and Rhys and then Azriel are next to Feyre. And Elaine has her fork like a weapon. She's like ready to stab Cassian if he gets up to anything. And they're eating in silence, and Feyre's like, ew, this food is disgusting. She doesn't say it out loud, but she's making faces. And Nesta's like, what? Is our food not good enough for you anymore? And Feyre's like, no, it's fine. Feyre, you need to have a better poker face. You can't come over to your sister's house and insult her food after forcing her to make all the servants leave and forcing her to let her like enemies into the house. You gotta pretend better. Rhys and Cassian and Azriel are like, delish, so good. They're like shoveling it down. Anyway, Nesta like keeps poking at it, and then Rhys drops his fork, and Elaine's like, and Feyre thinks to herself, and though Nesta had let me use this house, though she tried to cross the wall for me, and we'd worked out a tentative truce, the tone of disgust and disapproval, I laid my hand flat on the table. I can eat and drink and fight just as well as I did before. Better even. Cassian chokes on his water. Az is like ready to jump in between them if they're going to start fighting. And Nesta just laughs. She goes, and Rhys is like, like if you ever come to Prythia, you'll understand we have food that's really a lot better than this. You'll understand like why she's like kind of looking at this food with disgust. And Nesta literally looks down her nose at him and is like, I have little interest in ever going to Prythian. So I'll have to take your word on it. Elaine's like, stop it. Elaine's trying to keep the peace. And then Cassian is staring at Nesta, a gleam in his eye that I could only interpret as a warrior finding himself faced with a new, interesting opponent. And then, mother above, Nesta shifted her attention to Cassian. Noticing that gleam, what it meant, she snarled softly. What are you looking at? Cassian's brows rose, a little amusement to be found. Someone who let her youngest sister risk her life every day in the woods while she did nothing. Someone who let a 14-year-old child go out into that forest, so close to the wall. My face began heating as I opened my mouth to say what I didn't know. Your sister died to save my people. She is willing to do so again to protect you from war. So don't expect me to sit here with my mouth shut while you sneer at her for a choice she did not get to make and insult my people in the process. Nesta did not bat an eyelash. She studied the handsome features, the muscled torso, and then turned to me, dismissing him entirely. Cassian's face went almost feral, a wolf who had been circling a doe, only to find a mountain cat wearing the hide instead. The Cassian Nesta meeting. The meet cute, if you will. The chemistry between Nesta and Cassian is pretty top tier. Pretty top tier. Also, she's like, you let a 14-year-old... She was 17. Like, what was the other option, to be honest? Again, I would have less issue with this conversation if we, like, maybe brought up the dad more often. Why is no one being like, I'm glad Papa Archeron isn't here because I would give him the one too. Because suddenly, like, he has not been, like, healed. He is still the same level of, like, mobility is what we've assumed. We've been told at no point has he had... That hasn't been healed, and he's on the continent going to conferences now. So, like, clearly he could have gotten himself a job that was not just his little Etsy shop. And, like, not a single soul brings him up. Nesta was 17 and also had no outdoor skills. Like, if we would have sent Nesta at 17 to the forest, she wouldn't have come back alive. And, like, could she have done better? 100%. But is this all her fault? No. And it always frustrates me when we treat her like it is. Elaine is like, you have to understand, like, this is, like, a really tricky situation for us. Like, we were raised to, like, really fear your kind. Tim Tam came here and, like, really, like, yelled at us, and it was really scary, and then stole our sister. And so, like, that wasn't a great vibe. And honestly, the vibes with the Fae in general, spooky-ooky. And she's like, our neighbor, Claire Better, was actually, like, taken by the Fae, and her whole family was murdered. And Rhys is like, oh, that's crazy. It's really a bummer. And Azrael's like, for sure. Like, that totally makes sense. Thank you so much, Elaine. And Elaine is like, as for Feyre hunting during those years, it was not Nesta's neglect alone that is to blame. We were scared and had received no training, and everything had been taken. We failed her. Both of us. Again, Elaine would have been maybe 16 at the time. They went to the forest. And, like, they had already been without, essentially, parents. I know their dad was there, but, like, not in spirit. And... I just, like, the blame is only, like, maybe 20% theirs. I'll give them some of the blame. Like, I'm not saying that they're blameless, but also, like, they all made choices about how they were going to deal with this, and Feyre's choice was just to go into the woods. And I don't know. I don't think at any point they were like, you got to go in there. Go. I mean, if she wanted to survive, I guess she had to. I don't know. I, like, don't want to fully let them off the hook, but I do think we place way too much blame on them in these books. And Feyre's like, can we just start over? And Nesta's like, fine. Cassian's still staring at her because obviously he's in love with her. And Azrael and Elaine have, like, a very polite conversation about the fact that he's, like, Illyrian and how he can fly and how flying's, like, pretty fun, except if there's a storm then it can be kind of scary, but, like, they're pretty well trained, so it's, like, not very scary. Like, it's a very, like, polite, amicable conversation. And then Nesta asks about the difference between the Illyrians and the High Fae, and Cassian and Rhys explain that any differences mark them as lesser Fae. Anything that distinguishes, like, anyone who does not look like Feyre or Rhys essentially is High Fae, and it's essentially just, like, a word that is used to make class distinctions, and it's pretty bigoted. And then she asks if Feyre is High Fae, even though Feyre was made, because it seems like if it's, like, a pretty exclusive tier of fairy, then maybe Feyre wouldn't make the cut. And Rhys says Feyre is whoever she chooses to be. And then Nesta says, write your letter to the queens tonight. Tomorrow, Elaine and I will go to the village to dispatch it. If the queens do come here, she added, casting a frozen glare towards Cassian, I'd suggest bracing yourselves for the prejudices far deeper than ours, and contemplating how you plan to get us all out of this mess if things go sour. And Rhys says, okay, we'll take that into account. And then Nesta, like, sort of offers to let them stay the night, and Elaine is like, yeah, we have bedrooms ready. Rhys, like, makes requests that there's, like, 2 bedrooms with 2 beds each, like, right next to each other. And Elaine's like, well, we don't have those, like, right next to each other in the house. Like, they would be, like, in separate halls. Feyre's like, it's fine, this is, like, my house with my sisters. And Rhys is like, no, like, magic works different here. I, like, want to stay close to you, especially when we're in this house with a woman who is, like, engaged to a man who, like, proposed to her with an iron ring. Like, they're clearly very anti-Fae, so we need to be safe. And Elaine's, like, a little embarrassed at that. It's kind of rude. Rhys, Elaine has been nothing but nice to you. It's fine. They, like, are going to make some rearrangements. It's gonna be okay. And Feyre just says, this one is just cranky because it's past his bedtime. Like, don't take him to heart. And then Nesta's like, dinner's over. Goodbye. That night, Rhys and Cassian, Azrael, and Feyre kind of stay up late to write the letter to the mortal queens, like, taking several drafts to, like, make it as perfect as possible. Both sisters had, like, long ago headed to bed. There is only one bed in Rhys and Feyre's bedroom, and Feyre's like, well, I'm not sharing this bed, so I don't know where you're going to sleep, Rhys. And Rhys is able to, like, create a bed from, like, a pocket dimension. And then they start talking about what had happened. Rhys says to Feyre, Nesta is a delight, by the way. And Feyre's like, well, she's her own creature. She's Nesta. And Rhys says, it's been a few centuries since someone got under Cassian's skin that easily. Too bad they're so easily inclined to kill each other. And then he goes on to explain that Elaine shouldn't be marrying that Lord's son. And he's like, partly because, like, you couldn't even go to your own sister's wedding. Like, clearly you couldn't score an invite, and that's, like, super rude. Okay, sorry. Feyre didn't invite either of her sisters to her wedding. They didn't even know she was getting married, so seems like this is not a priority for the Archeron girlies. Like, I don't think Feyre can be a little upset that Elaine's not going to have her at her wedding when Feyre didn't invite her to her wedding. But Rhys is mad about this. And Feyre gets a little prickly at the way that Rhys is, like, mocking her sisters and points out the, like, melodrama in his own court. She's like, whoa, before you start belittling my sisters anymore, let's talk about the Azriel Moore situation. And they, like, chat about that for a little bit, and I fear Azriel, my beloved. Azriel's actually not my favorite. We just don't know that much about him. I feel like some people are, like, really smitten with Azriel, and I just, like, feel like we know, like, 3 facts about the boy. And it's just not enough for me to be smitten. But I do fear Azriel may have what I like to lovingly refer to as Dorian syndrome. Dorian Havillard from the Throne of Glass series, bless his heart, does fall in love with every single pretty girl he encounters. He falls in love and, like, he's like, this is my true love. I would die for them. All these people think love's for show, but I would die for them in secret, sort of levels of just, like, true love every time he sees a beautiful woman in his life. And I fear Azriel may suffer from the same thing. So he has fallen in love with Moore, and his vibes with Elaine were flirty tonight. I just think we should keep an eye on him, because I think it may be chronic. And Rhys is like, okay, let's not talk about those. Keep those on the DL. And Feyre's like, I played it. I don't want to, like, become a gossip. My life is miserable enough as it is. Why would I want to spread that misery to those around me? And Rhys is like, your life is miserable. Really hurts his feelings. And Feyre's like, well, I don't know. Everything is happening really quickly. Like, I just left the spring court, like, a few days ago. I don't know exactly what to feel. And Rhys is like, okay, like, maybe when we go home, you can have, like, a day off to, like, hang out. I don't want your life to be miserable. It, like, really hurts Rhys's feelings every time. Every time Feyre's like, I'm really depressed and sad, and I want to not be alive anymore, and I'm miserable. And Rhys is like, please stop. Rhys magics them, like I said, a second bed and also jammies for them to wear. Feyre climbs into her bed. When she climbs into it, he's already magically warmed it for her. And she thanks him. She's like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And Rhys is like, Amaranth had never once thanked me for that. And Feyre's like, she didn't suffer enough. And Rhys says, I didn't think I could get through that dinner. Your sisters mean well, or one of them does at least, but seeing them sitting at that table, I hadn't realized it would hit me as strongly. How young you were, how they didn't protect you. I think this is an appropriate response coming from someone who is, like, very much on Team Feyre. Like, he is supposed to be Feyre's, like, buddy pal. I think it is appropriate that he is mad at her sisters, but again, I would appreciate if some of this ire was directed towards Papa Archeron, who also did not one single thing to keep Feyre safe and sound and fed during those years. And then Feyre and Rhys talk about how her sister should have done better, but if she hadn't gone into those woods, then, like, Rhys would still be under Amaranth's thumb, and, like, all the stuff under the mountain wouldn't have happened. So, like, maybe everything happens for a reason. And then Rhys asked her, like, kind of randomly, like, when's your birthday? And Feyre's like, oh, my birthday is on the solstice, on winter solstice. And Rhys is like, that was a few months ago, and I didn't see you celebrating with Tamlin in the spring court, like, down the bond. And Feyre was like, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want there to be a party, and, like, there was already so much happening with the holiday, so I didn't say anything. And Rhys is like, you were truly born on the winter solstice? And Feyre says, is that so hard to believe? My mother claimed I was so withdrawn and strange because I was born on the longest night of the year. She tried one year to have my birthday on another day, but forgot to do it the next time. There was probably a more advantageous party to plan. Now I know where Nesta gets it, Rhys says. Honestly, it's a shame we can't stay longer, if only to see who will be left standing, her or Cassian. My money's on Nesta, Feyre says. A soft chuckle that snaked its way along my bones, a reminder that he'd once bet on me. Had been the only one under the mountain who had put his money on me defeating the Middengard worm, he said. So is mine. The next morning, Feyre and Rhys are in a snowy forest, and they're still in the Mortal Lands, and Rhys is like, it's time for you to, like, do some magic practice. Okay. I don't know why Feyre doesn't question this. We'll learn, like, very quickly. This is a trick. But, like, why doesn't Feyre be like, no? Because they're supposed to leave, like, pretty early. Like, they're going to have breakfast, mail that letter, and then they're headed out. Like, why are they doing magic practice first? That seems, like, quite dangerous. They're like kind of out in the middle of nowhere. They need to be far enough away from the like city, the village, so that they avoided detection, and also if things went wrong that Feyre didn't accidentally hurt anyone. Rhys pulls out a candle and tells Feyre to light the candle, then use water to douse the flame, and then to dry it again so it could be relit. And Feyre's like, I literally don't know how to do any of that. Like, could you give me some tips? And Rhys does his patented Rhys strategy, which is just like, try, go, give it a go. And Feyre's like, can we do like mental shielding instead? At least I have like I know how to do that. Or physical shielding. She has to do physical shielding because she's done that on accident a few times. So she at least has like a sense of where that magic should like exist within her body. And Rhys is like, later we could do some shape shifting if you'd rather, which is Tamlin's power. And Feyre is like, okay, well, I don't want to deal with Tamlin's power. And she decides she'd rather do the water and fire stuff. And then Feyre tells Rhys to leave because she can't focus when he's around, and she can sense him even if he's in a nearby room. And Rhys says, okay, just give a shout down the bond if you need anything. Feyre spends an hour just staring at the candle and nothing happens. And she's like trying to think about everything that makes her mad, because that's normally when her power manifests, when she has these like strong emotions, but like still nothing happens. And after an hour, she decides to take a little break, and she finds a loaf of bread and a note from Rhys that says, I'm bored. Any sparks yet? And a pen appears, and she writes back, no, you snoop. Don't you have more important things to do? She writes back. Again, she learned how to read a month ago. Clearly, like, she is just like the creme de la creme, top student at Rhys school. Because, like, how are you writing all of these words already? I can't spell, and I've known how to read and write for 25 years at this point. And I still can't spell definitely. And she's out here writing like fully coherent, grammatically correct, spelled correct sentences. And Rhys writes back, I'm watching Cassian and Nesta get into it again over their tea. Something you subjected me to when you kicked me out of training. I thought this was your day off, our day off. And Feyre says, poor baby High Lord, life is so hard. And Rhys says, life is better when you're around. And look how lovely your handwriting is. And Feyre says, you're a shameless flirt. But before Rhys can send back some flirty little reply, someone's got a hand over Feyre's mouth. He's holding her hostage. It's the Attor. Yikes. The Attor tells her not to scream, and Feyre complies, trying to figure out what's going on and what she's going to do, when suddenly the Attor screams and like darkness surrounds them. Rhys is immediately there. He ties the Attor to a nearby tree with like bands of darkness, and then starts stabbing it with like spears of darkness. And Rhys is like, answer my questions and you can crawl back to your master. And the Attor explains that he's there to capture Feyre because the king wants her, and he doesn't know more than that. He doesn't know why the king is after her. The king is currently in Hybern trying to raise an army. Azriel appears a minute later. Cassian stays back at the house to keep watch over the girlies, the other Archeron sisters. And Rhys says to the Attor, the next time you try to take her, I kill first and ask questions later. And then Az and the Attor vanish, and Rhys explains that they won't kill the Attor, that they'll torture him for a little bit, ask some questions, and then use him to send a message to Hybern. And then Feyre gets really mad because she realizes this was all part of the plan. Feyre realizes that Rhys was using her to hunt the Attor. She was using him as like bait. And Rhys is like, yeah, but you were safe the whole time. Like, I would do it again. Like, it was really helpful. And Feyre's like, why didn't you just tell me what we were planning on doing? And Rhys is like, well, maybe I'll tell you next time. And Feyre is like, there will be no next time. And she shoves him as hard as she can. And he like really stumbles back. She like has again forgotten like how strong she is with her new Fae body. And she's like, whoa, I forgot. Like, she thinks to herself, she'd forgotten how strong she was. And Rhys responds to that mental thought. Yes, you did. You forgot that strength, and you can burn and become darkness and grow claws. You forgot, and you stopped fighting. And Feyre's like, it's not easy. And Rhys says, try harder. And then he starts winnowing around the clearing as she tries to like kind of like get at him. She's still really mad at him. And she's chasing him around this clearing as he's like winnowing from spot to spot. And then she slams into this tree, and then he's like laughing behind her, and she like goes to chase him, and this time she chases him between worlds, and then she winnows to follow him, tackling him into the snow. And Feyre's got Rhys pinned to the snow with her talons. He's still giggling, and she says to him, don't you ever use me as bait again. You said I could be a weapon. Teach me to become one. Don't use me like a pawn. And if part of my work for you, then I'm done. Like, this is not something I am okay with. And Rhys stops laughing. He's like, okay, fair enough. Like, I understand. And he stands up, brushes himself off, and asks her to do it again. And Feyre's like, no, I'm going back to the chateau. And Rhys is like, I'm sorry. And Feyre says, why does the king of Hybern want me? And Rhys is like, I'm gonna find out, but like, I truly am sorry, like I didn't think things through. Let's eat breakfast and then go home. And Feyre just says to Rhys, like, Velaris is not my home. And it really, really hurts Rhys Rhodey's feelings. He's like, oh, okay. They go back to the house, and Cassian like disappears as soon as Rhys arrives to go help Az. And as he leaves, he like bows mockingly to Nesta, and she flips him off. Feyre says, it's a vulgar gesture I didn't know she knew how to make. And then Cassian laughs and then like ogles Nesta, like very obviously, like gives her the up and down. Oh, I love them so much. The sisters then go into town to post the letter. Rhys and Feyre come with them, but Rhys magics them to be invisible. They send the letter to the mortal queens, and then Rhys and Feyre immediately head back to Velaris. Rhys leaves her at the townhouse so he can go check on the Attor situation while Feyre eats a snack. She eats a snack, she hangs out. Rhys returns like an hour or so later and is like, it's done. We learned what we needed to learn. And he's like, how much do you want to know? Like, I will tell you as much as you want to know, Feyre, but like, it's a lot. Like, if you don't want to know all of it, that's also fine. I don't know what you can like handle. And Feyre's like, I want to know everything. Take me there. And Rhys is like, he's in the Hewn City, which is the city under the mountain. And he like knows that Feyre is not ready to go there. That's going to be a rough day for Feyre. And so he shows her mentally what happened using like his mind tricks again. That Az is talking to the Attor, chained to the wall in this holding cell. And Rhys is thinking about how he needs to make a visit to the Court of Nightmares, but not today because Feyre winnowed today. And so he needs to go celebrate Feyre's winnowing. And also she's mad at him, so he needs to go deal with that. Because we're in Rhys's head, so we're seeing some of his thoughts. And we get Az like stabbing the Attor with a knife called Truth Teller. This is Azriel's knife. It's an important knife. And the Attor explains that the king told him where they were. That's how he found where they were. But he doesn't know how the king knew. And then the Attor says to Rhys, good luck trying to keep her, High Lord. And Azriel goes, why? And Azriel just thinks about how, or Rhys thinks about how cool Azriel is, how tough and cool he is for a second. You know, just, again, he like really loves his besties. And he will take any opportunity to compliment them. And the Attor says, do not think it's common knowledge that you took her from Tamlin. The king could help you keep her. Consider sparing you if you worked with him. And then Rhys is like sick of this, and he uses his Damonti powers to rummage through the Attor's mind, trying to find any secrets. And it's clear that the Attor doesn't know anything else. He doesn't look at the memories from under the mountain because he knows he wouldn't be able to like handle seeing the Attor torture Feyre and leaving him alive. Like, he would have to kill him, and he knows in this moment that sending a message is more important than vengeance, and they plan to like break all the Attor's bones and leave him off the coast of Hybern as like a message to the king of Hybern. What is the message? We caught ya? I mean, if you don't send him, I don't really know why they did this. Sometimes they're like, we need to send a message. And I'm like, if the Attor never comes back, I think the message would be clear. You could leave the Attor's body. And I think it would send a similar message if we killed him and then dumped his body on the coast of Hybern. Like, what message are we trying to send, besties? Then we're back in Feyre's body. And Feyre is like, wait, what's happening with the Spring Court? Like, because Spring Court was mentioned. And Rhys is like, nothing right now, but you know how Tamlin can be when he is driven to protect what he thinks is his. And Feyre thinks of that night in which Tamlin like exploded, and like the night where she had like first shielded herself because he had like gotten so mad when she suggested that she didn't want to marry him anymore. And Rhys thinks at the thought of that because he sees it in her mind. I should have sent more that day, Rhys said with a quiet menace. I snapped at my mental shields. I didn't want to talk about it. And the Feyre's like, okay, thanks for telling me. And then Rhys once again apologizes for tricking her that morning with the Attor. And Feyre says, okay, I need to go write a letter. And Feyre writes a letter to Tamlin, which is easy now because, again, she can read and write. A month ago, she was illiterate. Now she is literate. I like truly think of Girly with the level of ease that Feyre picked up reading. I think if you would have tried by herself, Feyre, if you would have looked at a book by yourself, you probably could have gotten it. We know Nesta loved a book. Like, we'll learn more about Nesta, but like, she loves reading. I think we hear that she like read a book occasionally as a kid growing up. They didn't have a single book in the house. I like feel like Feyre could have taught herself. Rhys really didn't do that much to help her. Rhys is now we like cut to Rhys reading the letter. And it says, I left of my own free will. I am cared for and safe. I am grateful for all that you did to me, all that you gave me. Please do not come looking for me. I am not coming back. And Rhys says to her after he finishes reading this letter, like, are you sure? And Feyre's like, yep. She's just like really hoping that it'll improve the situation between Tamlin and the Night Court, that he will see this letter and recognize that like Feyre is gone and he's lost her and like he should move on. I don't know why she thinks this will work for him. He's never been rational like that. And Feyre just says to Rhys, I am no one's pet. What's next? And they talk about their next plans for like the politicking. They need to go get Book of Breathings. They need to meet with the Mortal Queens. Then they're going to go to Hybrid. Those are like the 3 big tasks they need to do. And then, but there's like nothing they can do tonight. And so Feyre says to Rhys, you told me the city was better seen at night. Are you all talk or will you ever bother to show me? And Rhys is like, you just know like this boy is so excited. He's trying to play it cool, but like he's so excited. And he says, tonight, let's find out if you, Feyre darling, are all talk or if you'll allow a lord of the night to take you out on the town. So that night, Amren meets Feyre up in her room, and the whole court is coming on out of the town. It's not just Rhys and Feyre. It's going to be the whole inner circle, and it's so fun. Giving Bejeweled. Best believe I'm still bejeweled when I walk in the room. I can still make the whole place shimmer sort of vibes. I like can't express to you enough how ACOMAF feels to me like the Midnight's album by Taylor Swift. Like it just like there's so many songs that like click into place. Like High Infidelity. Do you really want to know where I was April 29th? Do I really have to chart the constellations in his eyes? You know, there's many different ways that you can kill the one you love. The surest way is never loving them enough. Girl, it's about Rhysand. When they get back downstairs, Mora and Cassian are bickering. Amren scares off Nuala and Cerridwen and explains that the servant girlies are half wraith, which is why they like kind of shadowy. They were trained as for Azriel as spies first, but then Rhys has made them like not spies anymore, but Azriel still like works with them and uses them to keep an eye on Amren, because Feyre's like, wait, are they spying on me? And Amren's like, no, they're spying on me. And Feyre's like, that's kind of rude. And Amren's like, no, I would be like very disappointed if Rhys's spy master didn't have spies watching me. That would be irresponsible of him. Feyre's like, Rhys doesn't punish them for disobeying, like Azriel's not listening to his instructions. And Amren says, the Court of Dreams is founded on 3 things: to defend, to honor, and to cherish. We're expecting brute strength and obedience. Many of Rhysand's top officials have little to no power. He values loyalty, cunning, compassion, and Azriel, despite his disobedience, is acting to defend his court and his people. So no, Rhysand does not punish that. There are rules, but they are flexible. And Feyre's like, hey, what's the deal with the tithe? Is that something you guys do? And Amren's like, there are taxes on city dwellers, but no tithe. Although Spring Court enacts one, there's not like a Prithian-wide tithe. And then Feyre gives the amulet back, and Amren's like, oh, you can actually keep that. There's no magic to it. And Feyre's like, what? You lied? And Amren's like, I found it at the bottom of my jewelry box. You needed something to believe you could get you out of the prison. And Feyre's like, but Rhys kept looking at it. And Amren's like, oh yeah, because he gave it to me 200 years ago, and he was probably surprised to see it again and wondered why I'd given it to you. Likely worried why I might have given it to you. You're welcome. So cute. I love this so much. This is like a very specific type of lie. And it's like my favorite kind of lie. And I love when people in my life lie to me in this way. But unfortunately, you cannot get caught. It is like a tricky, tricky lie. Okay? And that is a lie that is going to make me feel better. Me having the information is not going to make me feel better. This will make me feel better. Like if there was a spider and I saw it by my bed and then I got freaked out and you say, oh, I killed it. Even though you don't know where it went. As long as you're sure that spider is not going to come and bite me in the night, like, gorgeous. Love it. Please tell me that. They head out in the town. The city is very much popping as they walk to dinner. It is like so pretty under the starlight. They are just chatting and having a lovely night out. No mention of Hybern, partially because like obviously that's confidential. Like you can't just be talking about that as you walk around the city. But also, and probably more importantly, because like this is their night off, they're like enjoying themselves, and no one on the street seems frightened of them. Like everyone kind of seems a little in awe of like seeing the inner circle, like walking all together on the city streets. Like this is not a sight that you see every day, but they're not scared. It like is just something exciting for them to see. The theaters are popping, and Feyre like thinks about how the fact she's never been to a theater. It was not something they had in their village or something they could like really afford. And Feyre is like, I have missed out on so much life up until this point, but like, I'm not going to anymore. Velaris is this city that is just like bursting with life, and she is so excited to, or not so excited, but like, is really open to experiencing it. They arrive at the restaurant, and the owner kisses Rhys on the cheek, and they get sat at this huge table, and they eat, and it's like the best food Feyre has ever had. And she's like, it like filled me up, but also like filled my heart in a way. Like, it was so beautiful and magical. The owner mentions that she's heard rumors that the prices might be increasing because of the war with Hybern and how it might make trade more difficult. And Rhys says, I wouldn't trouble myself, not when I like your cooking so much. What are you gonna do if there's like no spices coming in because of the war? Like, are you gonna pay the difference, Rhys, for just this woman because you like her cooking? What about everyone else? There's like a limited supply. Are you just gonna eat all the costs? What if there's none coming in? I just like don't think this is actually like what you can do as like a leader of a city. Like, I do think Rhys is not great at policy. Then she talks to Feyre about the food, and Feyre loves it so much the owner decides to give her a special little dessert, and she also brings Amarin a special goblet of blood that's been lovelily spiced. And Amarin's like, oh my gosh, thanks, you didn't have to do that. And the owner is like, it's fresh and hot, and we needed the beast for tomorrow's roast anyway. And then Moore suggests they go dancing at Rita's. Az is excited about it, but Cassian's like, don't you have to leave first thing in the morning? And Az is like, I'm gonna go though. And Moore is like, come on, Cassian, will you deign to join us, or do you have plans to go ogle your muscles in the mirror? And Cassian says, okay, I'm going to go to Rita's for drinks, but no dancing. I don't like dancing. And then Moore says, thank the mother. You nearly shattered my foot the last time you tried. Feyre doesn't want to go dancing. She's looking for Amarin, but Amarin headed back to the restaurant to go get more blood to take home with her, Rhys explains. And then Feyre turns to Rhys and says, are you going to go dancing? And Rhys says, I'd rather walk home. It's been a long day. And he like waves the rest of them off, Moore and the boys off, and him and Feyre walk home together. And he offers her his coat. And he takes her to his favorite spot in the city and talks about how his sister loved this side of things. And they would have to like drag her out at the end of the night because she just loved being in this part of the city so much. But he doesn't live over here because it's like very loud, and he wanted a place to escape. And Feyre is like, why didn't you just like reorganize the city? Like, you're the High Lord. You're the High Lord. Couldn't you do that sort of stuff? And Rhys is like, why would I change one single thing about this place? And Feyre's like, isn't that what High Lords do, whatever they please? And Rhys says, there are a great many things that I wish to do that I don't get to do. Like, kiss Feyre on the mouth right now. Feyre asks if Amarin and Rhys are together since he buys her jewelry, and Rhys is like, no. I just buy her presents because she does a good job and I want to stay on her good side. And Feyre's like, well, you weren't married either. And Rhys is like, no, like, I have never been really tempted to marry anyone that I have been with at all. And like, honestly, I don't think any of them would have said yes. And he kind of explains that being with him really put the target on people's back because of his role within Prythian, because of how powerful he is. Night Court is really hated by most of the other courts outside of Night Court, and so if you marry Rhys, you're also putting yourself in a lot of danger. And Feyre's like, why do you keep all the good you do secret? And then Rhys says, there was a time when Night Court was like the Court of Nightmares, when that was the night, when that was it. And it really truly was ruled from the human city, but an ancient High Lord had a different vision, and rather than allowing the world to see his territory vulnerable at a time of change, he sealed the borders and staged a coup, eliminating the worst of the courtiers and predators, building Velaris for the dreamers, and establishing trade and peace. And it's been a secret ever since. There's been like a lot of sacrifices to keep those secrets, but the darkness like kind of remained outside of that and growing also within the court as the like divide between the two halves of the Night Court grew. And so they allowed the Court of Nightmares to continue to exist in order to keep the Court of Dreams secret, and it allows them to have like a front that allows the other courts to be kind of like blind to Velaris's existence, because they know that without that, other courts might try to invade or attack them, because there's like a lot of wealth also within Velaris, and they also will be interested in like any other secrets they've kept hidden. Okay, let's talk foreign policy with the Night Court. Now let's talk on the politics of the Night Court, because I actually think this is like heinous and upsetting. I think because we earlier this scene we had the conversation around how like Rhys does not even charge a tithe. That's just Tamlin being ridiculous. I'm sorry, Rhys allows like a whole evil empire to exist so he can have one cutie city. And the city is cutie. I totally understand that, but you cannot let a large chunk of your citizens be evil just so some of them can have a nice place to live. Like, we will learn more about the politics of the Night Court as we continue through the series, but I just like don't think that it is justly ruled in any stretch of the imagination. We like hear Moore's story of like how terrible of a time she had in Night Court, and she can't be the only one. Women outside of Velaris are treated so intensely poorly, like in every other part of the Night Court. that we're told about, whether that's the Illyrian war camps or whether that is the Hewn City. Like, we're told that they're just like treated heinously. And Rhys is like, but we have to let them do that because otherwise Velaris would have to stop existing. And I just like, no, I just don't think this is a justifiable way to govern. And then Feyre asks, are you worried about Az going to the Mortal Lands tomorrow? And Rhys says, a little, but he's been to worse places and he would be like insulted at my worry. And Feyre's like, does he mind torturing people? Rhys is like, it's hard to tell. Azriel doesn't like to talk about it. He's talked to Mor about it, but barely. And Feyre's like, have him and Mor ever hooked up? And Rhys is like, that's their business and maybe also Cassian's business, but I'm like not interested in getting in the middle of it. And then Feyre is getting tired from all the hills and ready to ask Rhys to fly her home when she starts to hear music. And she realizes almost immediately that it's this like smaller version of the orchestra she heard when she was under the mountain that like was sent to her. And she realizes pretty quickly that Rhys must have been the one to send it to her. And Feyre says, you sent the music into my cell. Why? And Rhys says, because you were breaking and I couldn't find another way to save you. And Feyre says, thank you for everything you did then and now. And Rhys says, even after the Weaver, after this morning with my trap for the Attor, my nostrils flare, you ruin everything. Rhys grinned, and I didn't notice if people were staring as he slid an arm under my legs and shot us both into the sky. I could learn to love it, I realized. The flying. Feyre's back at home reading a book when a paper falls out with a flirty message from Rhys. They pass notes back and forth, flirty McFlirterson vibes, lots of convos about licking. That's like the central theme of their flirty little conversation is about like them licking each other, or where they would lick on the other person. Okay, that is extremely flirty. Feyre dreams of the Attor that night, but the dreams don't even wake her. Okay. Time for gym class at Rhys School. PE at Rhys School. Cassian has started training Feyre up on the roof of House of Wind. They have like a training court up there. And he's like walking her through the basics of hand-to-hand combat. Azriel's already back from the mortal realm. He just like made a quick trip because he found a shield around the queen's palace and returned to like see what could be done about it to get through that. But currently he's in the other sparring ring with Rhys. And they are currently shirtless and Feyre is admiring them a little bit because they are handsome young men that are 500 years old. And Cassian explains about the tattoos because both Rhys and Azriel and also Cassian are like pretty heavily tattooed. And he explains that they get the tattoos as when they're initiated as warriors and they are for luck and glory on the battlefield. And Feyre realizes that her tattoos that she got from Rhys in the bargain are like in the same style and that she wonders if he gave them to her for luck and glory on the battlefield of Amarantha. Aww. And as she's watching, she's struck with an idea for a painting. Like the first one she's really been struck with since she's been under the mountain. She just knows exactly how she'd depict the scene in front of her. And it's this like real moment of like healing for her because again, she has like not been able to paint since she has been under the mountain. And then Cassian asks her about the letter she sent to the spring court and Feyre is kind of like upset and taken aback that he knows about it. And she like kind of rebuts as a defense mechanism about a comment with Cassian's role in the Mor Az flirtation. And now she's like thinking about this letter and she's like worried about how Tamlin might have responded to the letter and is like really like quickly gets caught up in this. And then again, I have to remind you, I mentioned it before, but I like need to remind you again because I need you to understand how I experienced this the first time, that I also was worried about Tamlin the first time I read this. Like literally I could not enjoy my time in Velaris because I was worried about the blonde man back in the spring court. It's not my proudest moment, okay? I think it's a red flag for me. Like, I should watch myself. That's a little alarming. Keep an eye on that. I didn't even like him very much as a character. Like, it was not like I was smitten with Tamlin. I found him like a very, like, C to B, maybe at his best moments, romantic lead, but I thought she was, like, going to go back and heal him. It's embarrassing. But it is my truth, unfortunately. Anyway, Feyre and Cassian are going back and forth talking about this, and Feyre's like, did Rhys tell you about the letter? And Cassian's like, no, Rhys told Az, and Az told me because Az needed to know for security reasons for the spring court, and then he wanted me to know so I could like prepare militaries if we needed to like deal with the spring court. And so it was all kind of in the name of like the good of the society, but it was not like we were just like gossiping about it. But Feyre's like clearly very annoyed that like her information has been being passed around from bro to bro, which she should have known better. The bros are gonna be talking. And Cassian is like, I'm sorry, like I didn't mean to hit her nerve, as like wouldn't have told me if he knew that it was going to upset you. Like, I just needed to know for my forces. And he's like, none of us think this is a joke. None of us are like laughing and passing this around like fun gossip. Like, we understand that it is really difficult what you did. It was just like my way of seeing if you needed to talk about it. Like, I joked about it because I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak on it if you wanted. And Rhys is like very clearly eavesdropping on this conversation. And Feyre just like goes back to training. And Cassian is like, you didn't answer my question about like how she's doing. And Feyre says, I'm fine. And Cassian says like, fine is good. But like both of them know fine is a lie. And then Feyre thinks to herself, I had done everything for that love. I had ripped myself to shreds. I had killed innocents and debased myself. And he had sat beside Amaranthus on that throne. And he couldn't do anything, hadn't risked it, hadn't risked being caught until there was one night left, and all he wanted to do wasn't free me, but to... And when Amarantha had broken me, when she had snapped my bones and made my blood boil in its veins, he'd just knelt and begged her. He hadn't tried to kill her, hadn't crawled for me. Yes, he'd fought for me, but I'd fought harder for him. Again, each pound of my fist on the sparring pads, a question and an answer. And he had the nerve, once his powers were back, to shove me into a cage. The nerve to say that I was no longer useful. I was to be cloistered for his peace of mind. He'd given me everything I needed to become myself, to feel safe. And when he'd gotten what he'd wanted, when he'd got his powers back, his lands back, he stopped trying. He was still good, still Tamlin, but he was just wrong. And as she thinks this and is like punching the sparring pads, she's like sobbing now as she thinks this. As she realizes she has like burnt through the sparring pads and is now like hitting Cassian's bare skin. She like kind of like flinches back. She doesn't want to hurt him. But he's like, I'm okay. Like, if you need to keep going, like, I can take it. And Feyre's like, I killed them. And Cassian is like, I know. And Feyre says, it should have been me. Now I'm down bad crying in the gym. Crying in Cassian's PE class. This moment did make me cry. In this read. Just a little. One single tear. Cute. Rhys steps in and wraps his arms, or his wings, steps over, like kind of replaces Cassian and wraps his wings around Feyre, kind of like shielding her from everything else. And he says to her, you will feel that way every day for the rest of your life, Rhysand said. This close, I could smell the sweat on him, the sea and citrus scent beneath it. His eyes were soft. I tried to look away, but he held my chin firm. And I know this because I have felt the same way every day since my mother and sister were slaughtered and I had to bury them myself. And even retribution didn't fix it. He wiped away the tears on one of my cheeks, then the other. You can either let it wreck you, let it get you killed like it nearly did with the Weaver, or you can learn to live with it. And Feyre says, I'm sorry about what happened to your family. And Rhys says, I am sorry I didn't find a way to spare you from what happened under the mountain, from dying, from wanting to die. I have two kinds of nightmares. The one where I am again Amaranthus Horror, or my friends are, and the ones where I hear your neck snap and see the light leave your eyes. And then Rhys is like, time to do some magic training. And they talk about her firepower from the Autumn Court. And then she tries to summon some darkness, one of Rhys's powers that she should have. And Rhys tries to instruct her, which is pretty much just him saying like, okay, just like will the darkness into being. Thank you. That's helpful. And they banter a bit about his shirtless state. And Rhys tries to like help her by like explaining that there are different types of darkness. But Feyre can only find the darkness from under the mountain, the darkness of like being alone and cold in that dungeon. But then Rhys tells her to close her eyes, and when she opens them, she's surrounded by Rhysand's darkness, and it is something like beautiful. It's like soft and quiet and peaceful, and he fills it with this like sparkling little lights that look like stars. And then it's really beautiful, and then it like goes away. There's sunlight again, and Rhys sends her home to take a bath, and she has Cassian fly her back, not Rhys, because as soon as she gets too close to Rhys, she gets uncomfy, and then she can't fly with him anymore. Okay. Hope you enjoyed that. I think it was actually 73 hours long. Will my recap be shorter than the actual audiobook? Time will tell. We're not even halfway. Next one is very fun. We get the infamous. The infamous? Is it? I don't know if it's infamous. That makes it sound like it's evil. We get the famous chapter 54, 55. 35 is coming up, actually. 35 is a good one, too. I believe it's number 35. We get some good chapters in the next chunk. They're fun. They're fresh. Feyre gets to go see some more of Rhysand's real estate holdings, so that's fun for everyone. Okay. I will see you there. See you so soon in the next one. Bye.